You want to start with the breathwork thing first?
Yeah, if you want to.
Okay.
You can start with an intention.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, let's start with that. You go ahead and guide us through an intention then.
Yeah. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. Well,
We're on. This is casual, man. Well, actually, let's first have you introduce yourself first.
well, my name is Intention. I was kidding. Pavel Stuchlik from Noah Aeon. And I spent my life questioning life itself because I was very unhappy, depressed, and sick. So it led me on a journey through self-transformation. And part of that transformation was understanding the powers of our awareness in every single situation. And so I've been gifted this gift that I've pulled from basically 3 different practices. And it became like the recipe for me and now for many others. I call it the instant presence. And I would like to start today with that.
Let's do it, man. Amazing. I'm gonna take off my shoes real quick.
Yeah. So wherever you are, if you're driving, do not close your eyes. If you can close your eyes, close them. And simply slow down your breath. We're going to go into deep inhale through your nose, about 6 seconds. And deep exhale out your nose for about 6 seconds. And just observe how you're bringing that energy back into your diaphragm, opening up the belly, chest. And start observing how when you take charge of your breath in a rhythmical way, it starts bringing the focus to your conscious mind from that autopilot. Now, as you're breathing, the second part to instant presence is body awareness. Throughout our life, we tend to live on our phones, computers, in our thoughts. And so I want you to ask yourself, where am I? Where am I? And start calling all of that energy back through the breath. With each inhale, you draw from within. And with each exhale, you flood your body with an information of I am here, present, peaceful. Whatever you'd like to infuse your cells with, you simply inhale, I am, long and deep, and exhale, just like vitamins, infuse it into the trillions of cells, constantly listening to the superior mind. And let us imagine little champagne-like bubbles bubbling up around your whole body. And next time that you inhale for 6, I want you to draw through these bubbles as if you were breathing through every pore of your skin. And each time that you exhale out these bubbles. Relax all of your muscles. Center into your body. Being aware of being aware means we're connected to your breath. We observe the body's awareness in a relaxed state. And the third part to this tool is, can you pay attention to the stillness and silence underneath the noise, underneath the sound? No matter where you are in the world, you can always be aware of your breath, body awareness, and stillness and silence underneath the noise. Because meditation awareness begins when it gets noisy, when life goes the other side of ways we would like. And so allow every opportunity to be a gift. And I want to set the intention. May we be used as an instrument of love and light in a perfect amount needed for the greatest good of the whole, in a triple benefit where it benefits me, you, and the whole ecosystem that we live on. And I want to invite you, as you're listening to us, stay aware of your breath. Relax into your body. Pay attention to what's underneath us listening, so you may listen through your whole body's awareness, not just 1 ear in and a 2nd ear out. It's an honor to be here. And I want to end this with vitamin S, and it stands for smile. We forget to smile in life. We tend to be so damn serious. And so, infuse smile. And maybe you can even imagine yourself in a mirror in front of you. And look at that body. Look at that temple. So many of us worry about things we lack, we don't have. But can you look at yourself? You are alive. You're healthy. To the perfect standards of today. You can always get better. how many people in the world cannot see, hear, have no place to stay, food to eat, clothes to wear? We're so lucky. Smile. Smile at your past, smile at your future, and welcome to this session.
Beautiful, man. Beautiful. That was incredible. Incredible way to start. I'm a little taken aback by how incredible your English is, given that like I'm a native English speaker and I couldn't have come up with something off the top of my head as incredible as that. So that's a perfect segue into your background. So where did you grow up? And I also want to get into your journey as a professional cyclist, if we could, to start.
Yeah. So I'm born and raised in Czech Republic, little town in the middle of Europe. And a lot of people still don't know until today and call it Czechoslovakia.
Yeah.
It's been changed twice since. But essentially, I was there until about age of 15. And then I came to US as a foreign exchange student. As soon as I could leave, I wanted to learn English, and I was intrigued by America. And so I was chosen by a host family in Florida. And funny story, I ended up going into literally middle of nowhere with like cattle and on a farm.
In Florida?
In Florida.
Oh,
in
boy. So like backwoods Florida.
Yeah, like a city called Brooksville.
And we're not talking like Palm Beach or anything like that.
No, it was so funny. Like I saw Florida, right? Like for the Miamis of the world.
Yeah.
And then you get there and I'm like, fuck, should I just stay at home? And this is obviously, now I appreciate it. It would be the total opposite. But it was funny as a 15-year-old, like, damn.
Yeah.
But it was an amazing experience. And, year later, I basically start pursuing, my cycling career further and further back then. And it was kind of my first like intro into traveling into that extent. And so I started with, the national team, and then I raced for a few different teams in Europe. I was stationed in Italy, sometime in Holland. And we did a lot of racing. The last 2 years, I raced for a Chinese team.
Oh, wow.
And so we did the whole tour of China and
that had to have been really cool, though.
Oh my gosh, I loved every bit of it.
Yeah.
We did, tour of Southland in New Zealand. And when I was 17, I started my first company because I had to support cycling. It didn't really give enough at that stage. And so I used all of this travel to basically start selling carbon bike frames. And this is, before Alibaba was trusted as it is today.
Yeah.
So I literally, my first business started off of putting the picture from Alibaba of a carbon bike frame on eBay, have somebody on eBay buy it, have enough time to get the money from eBay to buy for it and pay for it to the Chinese factory and ship it directly from there. And then later on, it grew into my first business, which I ended up customizing basically carbon bike frames for bike shops and other brands or companies. And so that was kind of my intro into the business world.
That's amazing, man. I have a question since we started with breath and you having been a former professional cyclist. When it comes to an endurance sport like that, I've never done a marathon. I've done like a Tough Mudder before, which is not really like any form of a half marathon. I used to be in the Army and we did run quite a bit. So I've done a 5K, I've done a 10K, I've done things like this. I've done ruck marches for like 12 miles. But it's a little bit different when you're competing in that at a professional level in cycling. How much of that, looking back, or maybe even you realized at the time, is about regulating your breath and like and really tuning into the present moment to persevere when you feel incredibly tired, or when your mind starts nagging you that, oh, I just want to stop, or this is too hard, or my legs are sore, et cetera, et cetera?
So, it's funny, like now looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish I've known all of these practices and trainings and recovery and biohacking. I would never, get into the place that I did, because what ended my cycling career was my health. So I actually, I never, I had all of these expectations and Tour de France and Olympics, all of that as a young athlete. And unfortunately, I caused it myself. Instead of recovering, I was on a call with factories and building my business. And so, with cycling, it's hours and hours on a bike.
Totally.
And so I actually, I collapsed in a Czech national race when I was about 18 or 19 years old.
Wow.
And I got diagnosed with Epstein-Barr, chronic fatigue. I mean, my whole health just went completely sideways. And I actually had to quit, before I was even 20, which was really sad.
Yeah.
Now, would it ever happen if would I ever find those things that I know now today if that didn't happen? Probably wouldn't. Mm-hmm. But what's interesting about sports in general, and I see it from all the other athletes that I met, mm-hmm. Is up until recent, breath wasn't something really taught.
No.
And I think I was really lucky. I had a Russian style, coach mm-hmm. Before I went pro. And he actually bought me this device. It's called Frolov. It's a Russian device that imitates breathing as a dolphin.
Wow.
And so you actually put water into this little canister. You inhale, and then you slow release exhale as long as possible. And it bubbles. And that's what actually trained my breath in the early stages, as if I knew that one day I'm going to literally make living out of breathing.
Wow.
And so that was my first introduction into breathing. By the way, you can find on Amazon, if somebody's interested in strengthening their breath, mm-hmm. There's some serious conditions that people go through that this can help. But anybody that wants to learn how to breathe through diaphragm, it's amazing. The alternative way you can do it too is just exhaling into water. So if mm-hmm. you're swimming, so just using that force, and maybe instead of every 2 strokes you breathe, extend it to 4 or 6. So you delay it, extend it, and slow release exhale into the water. Really lovely training that I also learned through cycling, actually.
Wow.
But what was interesting, so I was always intrigued by mysticism, spirituality. I mean, I was
even from a young age?
From a young age.
Wow.
So all the other guys, when we were traveling, I had hours, right? We would be in a tour bus or we would be on a planes between the races. And it's kind of similar to what we do today. We literally tour in the events and delivers totally different, performance. But I read Conversations with God when I was 15 years old. I read Edgar Tolle, and I got initiated into Kriya, into the, Yogananda's and Babaji's lineage. Yeah. And I traveled through India when I was on my breaks in between cycling.
Wow.
And so it was really interesting. And I think it started from my mom when I was about 6-7 years old. She brought shaman to our home to train with Siberian shaman. And it was wild idea and concepts for me. And I didn't really accept it for a long time. But I think it was the foundation to there is more than just the body. There's more than just the flesh. And
what an incredible foundation to have. Mm-hmm. Honestly, yeah. Because so many of us in this space sort of have a traumatic experience or something like that in order to come into this stuff. And not that you didn't, obviously collapsing in a race when that's your dream is to become a professional cyclist and join the Czech Olympic team and things like this, totally traumatic experience in and of itself. But it's incredible that you had that foundation to start with. Was your mom just spiritually oriented growing up, or what made her want to get this Siberian shaman into your life?
Yeah, so I mean, my mom was always the wild one, especially at that time, because it wasn't as accepted as it is today. Workshop junkie and going from a new age opening of this, to that. So that was awesome. I mean, she also brought me to multiple different workshops that really helped me open up, opening Illuminated Heart from Drumvalo Melchizedek. And if you ever came across his work, learning about Merkabas and so on. She also, I was 12, 13 years old. She would take me into yoga classes, then do Tai Chi. And I remember I was one boy with 30 women there. And again, now I would appreciate it. different stages. So I think it laid as a foundation. And then I started being interested in myself. I mean, but it was very much, it's funny. I remember vividly, I was in a training in Italy and I would do 5-6 hours, whatever, on a bike. And then the rest of the day I would go into nature and I'd be meditating. But I remember how hard it was. That veil was really thick still. Because I don't know if you see the same. Nowadays, I feel I'm in this meditative state in everyday life more often than it used to be. And before I was trying to like obtain it, and it was very much like going through the egoic mind and the intellect into it. And I remember like my goal at 15 was like to become enlightened, right? Now I see like how do we bring that enlightened part of us, back. So it was interesting to reflect back on that.
Awesome. So you were tipped off to a more spiritual orientation about life. You had this traumatic experience in cycling, and you basically said, okay, that can't be my path anymore. At what point did it evolve into going into dark room and things like this? And then how did you start orienting yourself to this path in life?
Yeah. So when I had to quit cycling, I remember I still try to race one more year for a US team. And also at that time, so listen to this story. I failed from the high school in Czech because I was never there. So I had like an individual plan, where
because you're traveling so much because of cycling.
Yeah, because of cycling. So I like wasn't studying, and the funny part is like my friends would always give me the answers, so I didn't have to worry about anything. And I think the teacher finally like caught up to it. So I had to take the test at the office instead of with everyone else.
Yeah.
And I was screwed.
Yeah.
So I failed like 3 different subjects because I didn't even look at it. And so basically I was going to either repeat that year, like the final year of high school. And I was like, no freaking way. This is not what I'm going to do. And I always struggled with that type of system, like
totally understandable. Totally understandable. And I think anyone who starts waking up to anything understands the problem with that system. I've done whole episodes on that. So understandable.
We are all just like lost, right?
Yeah,
and trying to like be packaged into something we're not.
Exactly.
And so, but I was so hungry for learning. And so in that moment, basically, I moved to the States to race for the Czech US team.
Oh, so you had dual citizenship then?
Not yet. No,
Not yet.
I just had like a e-visa.
Got it. And you're trying to get dual citizenship to race for the US team, essentially.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
And so essentially, I ended up paying my friend to finish high school for me, online high school in America, because I discovered in Europe, you can't do online high school. It's like, yes, welcome to America.
Yeah.
And so my friend literally acted like me for that whole time being. And I already had my business. So I was like, was the last thing I was interested in. And so ironically, I just finished the diploma, shipped it to my dad. So that way he's happy that he has something. And I went full on into the business career. So I remember I didn't qualify for visa at first. So the other way to do it is through business. And so we had to figure out how do we stay here, right? So, I ended up looking into different businesses. I went from like a bike store to a lounge in Miami. I went on bizbuysell.com. And so I ended up finding a sushi restaurant in Boulder, Colorado.
That is so random.
Never been in sushi industry. And I ended up basically getting it.
Yeah.
But within 3 months, it didn't qualify for the visa because restaurants don't show profit. And there's like a ratio you need to show to qualify to this United States thing that now it's a whole nother conversation.
Right.
And essentially, I ended up having to find something really quickly. And my dad was living in Hawaii at that time. And he was talking about this whole frozen yogurt, boom that's happening. Do you remember that whole, buzz?
Yeah.
So we ended up buying into Tutti Frutti frozen yogurt chain and in Hawaii. And I was literally supplying, powders and stores and building this frozen yogurt thing. And within about a year, I was so sick and tired of making people fat. Like it was so against like what I stand
core
for.
Principles. Yeah.
Just couldn't go to work anymore. That we literally left with, my fiance already at that time, and went to Florida. And basically, I went on a hunt to find something, new. And this was like when an athlete like loses its identity, it was probably one of the hardest.
I totally get it, man. I've been a professional athlete too, so I totally understand.
Right? It's like who are you? Right? It reshapes everything. It's actually quite dangerous. And so I'm dealing with that, right? And I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna be now a businessman, Well, thankfully, I ended up finding Orange Theory Fitness. And this is when there were only maybe 6-7 stores open. Like now there's over 2,000, in the world. And I walked in there and I was intrigued by how they train. It was so much like what I used to train, high intensity interval training, heart rate monitors, all of the, parts to make it also accessible.
Mm-hmm.
And so I discovered that it's a franchise. And I was 22 years old at that time. And I took a car, drove across to Fort Lauderdale, and to meet the founders. This is like 5 people in the whole corporate. Now it's like 300. It's crazy. And I'm like, this kid there with some business experience, but like, I would like to franchise your company. And so they gave me a few days before the dark period, because franchises redisclose once a year. And they were going to keep Georgia State as a corporate otherwise. And so they were like, if you can make all of this happen, you can have it. And so I ended up getting everything done. Within like a week, we were on a car to Atlanta, where I've never been. And basically within 6 months, we became the fastest growing region in the entire chain.
Wow.
And so for me to do, 7 hours on the bike or 15 hours on working, it was so much easier. So it was like there was that endurance, that kicked in.
Yeah, totally.
And so we ended up partnering up with the president, with the CEO. We ended up growing it into 7 different regions. And we had almost 100 licenses under my belt at the peak. And that was my next many years to come, was just building this fitness empire.
Wow.
But what happened was, few things. In this moment, I've committed myself that I'm not going to lose myself. So I was always spiritually inclined. And every 3 or 4 months, I would commit that I go and do something ridiculous, something outside of my comfort zone. Because I always had these voices. There's more to life. This is not it. This is, just kept on like eating me up in the midst of the capitalistic mindset that was like overpowering everything,
Totally.
based on what we think that we want. And so I start getting burnout again. I start getting, tired, fatigue, sick, up and downs. My marriage at that time started failing. And even though I had it all, I made millions of dollars in such a short period of time, there was something deep missing, inside. And so I started doing crazy things. I went into samurai camp in Japan, to Kyoto.
Holy shit, how did you even find that?
It was my mom, actually.
Really? Of course, your mom. Siberian shaman.
She was like, you need to go to Japan to train with the samurais. Like, of course, mom.
That's so cool, though. That's just like the most random thing ever. More random than a Siberian shaman, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, that's awesome, though. That's amazing. So what was that like?
It was also Zen master training. So it was just like them training, right? So there's a lot of Zen master tradition.
Totally makes sense.
There's a lot of martial arts. There's a lot of hardships, right? Mind. But to be honest, I was a bit turned off. Like, it's amazing from like the warriorship, right?
Yeah.
But I also don't believe that in today's world, you need to learn through that hardship and regimen. Because I think a lot of my past trauma came from beating myself up with a stick.
Totally get that.
And I think we do that a lot in today's world, and we need to stop that. And so we don't
Especially
have to...
men tend to do that a lot more. I even talked about that on the last episode I recorded, that like when it comes to mind, body, health, a lot of men in the more Tony Robbins, David Goggins-esque space tend to look at that from, just toughen up, just like toughen up your mind. And it's like, yes, that is a piece of it. Don't get me wrong, but it's also about pulling you here, especially for men today, being pulled into here. So I could totally see that. That makes sense.
Yeah, and we see it all the time. I mean, even with women, because women have it from more of the aesthetic point of view.
Yeah.
And I think it's Alison Armstrong. She does a great work with like the differences.
We talked about that on the last episode too. Alison Armstrong. That's crazy.
Well, and so like if you think about like the biological part, right? Like if women have constant feedback from everything about themselves, right? It's really just eating us. And so what I didn't like is that, we were doing these meditations, like about 4-hour meditations in the morning, like vast. You had to keep your eyes open slightly, and then you just count to 10 and then down from 10. It's actually really simple. And that's to occupy your mind. And if you start drifting, there's literally a monk with a stick, that's gonna beat you
Holy shit.
and hit you to wake back up.
Holy shit, dude.
And so again, like I'm
Were you in
all
the lotus
about
position or how
yeah,
in the
meditation
lotus-
position.
okay. Oh
So
my
if you
God.
like the first few days, you're like dying. You're just like, and then like
Yeah.
from all of the rigorous training as
Yeah.
well. But yeah, so I was like, this is lovely, you know, thank you for the experience, but it is not my path, you know, to myself. And so, you know, this is why like I resonate so much with Jasmuheen, and we'll talk about it later, is she leads with the feminine way of fun and joy and intuition. And I think especially for us men, we need to rediscover that.
Yeah.
And like lose that macho man, use the willpower in like discipline and ways, right, to direct it.
Discipline's good, willpower is good, but it's incorporating it and infusing it with the embodied heart-based approach too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Okay, so from there, so you're doing these journeys every 4 months, which is incredible, by the way. I also talked with Alex Wolf from Eons. We talked about how things like this, and then also sometimes psychedelic substances can be a tool to help you sort of zoom out from your typical mundane day-to-day repetitive life. And so when did that lead to you having a darkroom experience?
Well, that was one of those crazy experiences.
Yeah.
So since I went to Drumvolo Melchizedek workshop in Hawaii, I was intrigued by one thing that they talked about, and that was darkroom, breatharians, and pranic people. And it was fascinating. It was just like in my core, it was like, wow, like what is this? Like I gotta be there, you know, one of those moments. And so it took me like 5 years to actually get the visa so I can get out of America and then to get out of the wait list. And so then I finally went, I think it's 8 or 9 years ago now, when I went to the first time. And so essentially it's 9 days, you know, 9 nights with 1 day before to adapt. So about 10 days in darkness. And it's a very different darkness. You know, you don't eat any physical food. You eat prana as a source, or you're source feeding. And it's an initiation into becoming a breatharian. Now, I didn't go there for this. My intention was to leave my cell phone behind. You know, there was a busy entrepreneur just like opening Orange Theories all over the country. And I wanted peace. And it took me 7 days to finally surrender. Like monkey brain and this, like it was like awful.
Because it's just you and your thoughts with no external stimulation.
Well, so this one is in a group.
Yeah.
But it's not like you're chatting. It's a silent group. But there's a series of meditation that Jasmuheen brings you through. And they're beautiful. They're different coding, channeling, you know, it's amazing. But the rest of the time you have there to think about your life. And so, you know, what was amazing is to occupy my mind, I would spend the first few days looking backwards. So I would literally look back every year that I could remember, and I would start thinking, who did I hurt? Who has hurt me? And it started hitting me like, oh my gosh, what an asshole I was to this person. And it's like, and then I start using, I'm sorry, please forgive me. You know, the Hawaiian ho'oponopono. I was just like releasing it out of my system. And it was tough, you know, because like I've done things I'm not proud of and I wish I've never done. And it was just eating me up. And so that helped me really take that handle without any drugs, without anything, just literally you and yourself. The next few days, I focus on the future. And so for the first time, I silenced myself enough from this busy, busy world of the beta brainwave dominance into, you know, the alpha, theta, and gamma states as well. And what happened was I started thinking like, why am I not following my passion? Why am I like, I love music and I want to produce music and all of this. And why am I not sharing this with others? And why am I just slave to some company that, yes, is amazing on a paper, but like doing nothing to my happiness?
Right.
And so day 7, I just start crying and purging. And I went into this beautiful state of just pure bliss. And all of a sudden just like basically dissolved into nothingness. And it must have been for hours. I have no idea.
Yeah, no concept of time.
Tracking it.
Yeah.
But finally, I truly believe I unhooked from the suit of the matrix or whatever we call this and rehashed everything. All of a sudden, just this stream of information. And literally at that moment is when Noah Aeon came about. It like came actually from Darkroom.
Wow.
And what's crazy, well, there's a lot of crazy things. Noah symbolizes duality. And my whole life, I've been playing ping pong, highs and lows, and good days and bad days, high sales and low sales. And And I was so sick and tired of this. I knew there is another way. And that's coming back into the center. It's coming back into balance, happiness, health, harmony on every level. So I got this clear message, like you cannot keep this information for yourself. You have to share this with others. So my passion became music. So I produce, in solfeggio frequency on a modern beat. My purpose became our events and lectures and giving these tools away. And the legacy was the third part that it gave me. And that was, how do you make means in living in service? And, that was the hardest part, because I also went broke after all of that. I went on the other side.
Yeah.
But so I walked out of there, learned how to DJ, how to produce music. I just went on the action item after another, because that's something that is in my nature as an athlete. I know goals, this, and let's go.
Totally.
And so I followed my heart, and I completely changed my life. I started selling all the Orange Theories. I didn't care. I literally left the lush and flushy things, behind. And now I live in service, and every day I want to spend the rest of my life doing that.
That is so beautiful, man. Wow. That's amazing. That's so cool. Can you share real quick, again, just to reemphasize, what does Noah Aeon stand for?
Yeah. So Noah means movement. Aeon is all or none. And it symbolizes duality. And the whole point is to come back into oneness. And so we're on a mission. This is so clear, to unify the world, one person at a time. So it all starts with you, and then bringing everybody else through all these tools that are available to us.
Amazing. I want to visit the darkroom experiences you've had, just because I'm incredibly curious about that. And then I want to talk also about the blueprint that you've come up with as well, that also came through darkroom. So with darkroom, and this may seem like a rhetorical question, but I just think this is so incredible. I'm infinitely curious with breatharianism, but also what nourishment actually looks like. And I've said this so many times on so many episodes, but my water fast experience that I did 15 days absolutely changed my life, changed my perception of what nourishment actually is, what is the purpose of food, how much food do we actually need, are we receiving nourishment from other sources? And I've come to the determination, even from a scientific lens, after you look at the work of Dr. Gerald Pollack and his studies with respect to fourth phase water, which we're likely comprised of, which I know we'll get into a little bit later, it all just makes sense. So I guess the first question I have related to that is, did you feel like in this darkroom experience, you were truly being nourished by chi, prana, life force, or something like this, especially since you didn't have food? And then also, most importantly, because a lot of people who talk about breatharianism are like, oh yeah, they feed off of sunlight, but you're in darkroom, so there is no sunlight. So how did you feel, and how did you feel like you were able to sustain and be nourished in that experience?
So I'll debunk some of these things first, because so there is a lot of bad even term around breatharianism. It doesn't necessarily mean that you live off of air, even though later when we talk about air, I mean, air is a main feeding point, right? Or in many ways, even in the physical terms. Now, then there is the other people that are the light people, or the solar fed people. And again, we're light creatures, right? Without light, we don't produce energy. But that is also not really what Jasmuhin teaches. So she spent the last 25 years, solely nourished by prana or source. She likes to call it source energy. That's really important. And what that means, and actually I love calling our spirit or soul, so many different titles for this vibration. I call it original source vibration that gives us life when we're born, that will come back into oneness when we die, in whichever shapes and form we believe in that. And that is that source that is limitless source of love. So that's it. Love, God, oneness. It is that in which is in everything that unifies us, that brings us all together. Now, here's the thing. When we are living busy world, when we're constantly, in the simplest term, focused on money, sex, power, which is what our society has been in the, many, many decades, we are then required to be very dense. overconsumption, very sensory type life. And that requires us to be further and further away from our source.
Yeah.
Now, every single one of us is fed by source energy. We would be dead without it. That's like the divine spark, right? That turns that, temple on or off. Now, the levels of how much we're fed by it is what determines how we spend time in our life. So if you think about it as like a keynote on a piano, right? There's the high note and low note and the ones in between. Now, higher the note, so to speak, lighter we are, right? We lift our vibration and frequency through healthy eating, healthy exercises, relationships, environment that we create around ourselves, then less density we require to operate in. And so I'll give you an example. When somebody has a new project that you're so excited about, or you start a new passion or new product, new podcast that you're developing, you lose the sense of your time and you also lose the sense of hunger because you're in a flow. So that is exactly that flow state. And this is why passion is the key to unlocking so much in our life, because in passion is where where this lies. And so what it matters the most is how you spend time. Now, when you go into a dark room, you're forced to basically be in stillness, silence, and solitude. It's by purpose. And what Jasmine teaches us, so I became ambassador of peace underneath her program in Brazil, and that teaches something called the 8-point luscious lifestyle. And it's a luscious lifestyle through which you can lighten up your frequency and vibration enough so that way you start losing the sense of hunger. You start losing the sense of not just physical hunger, but we're also talking emotional, mental. And so the craziest part about darkroom, you would think that the physical hunger is the hardest part, but it absolutely is not. Like the first time I went, I literally kid you not, like I would be dreaming of lamb chops, like flying around. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, I like lamb chop, but not that much. And then like all of the emotional and mental attachments we have to socializing this way and eating. And so I was like, wow, like there's all these addictions that we don't consider addictions, right? It's just in us that, by the way, the best way, if you ever wonder if you're addicted to something, I always ask this question, does it own me or do I own it? It's that simple. And so like caffeine owns me. So I'm trying to now literally move out of it. And it's not that I won't ever use it, but it's just the fact that something is literally telling in my head that I have to have it.
Yep.
Sideways.
Yeah, I totally agree with that though, man. I totally agree.
So you want to be in ownership of whatever your choices and consequences always are. Now, back to the darkroom. So when you are in that state, you might be at first nourished 90-10. So Jasmine teaches us a ways to test your pranic levels. And it could be muscle testing, it could be intuitive, and we can get into it later, different psychic senses that we all have that are really interesting to be able to validate things. Yeah. And essentially, you may be 90-10 or 80-20. Now, when you're 80-20, so nourished by prana only 20%, you are hungry. You're also fasting. So you're in a fasted state and you're also losing weight. So that's kind of what happens for a lot of people there. They may lose 15, 25 pounds because they didn't quite hit those levels. So this is why it's so advised that you actually do detox before you even go there. So you're not going there for the detox. You're actually going there for the source nourishment.
Wow.
Now, as the day go by, you may be 50-50. You may be 60-40. It starts splitting. And there is a certain point of time which blew my mind. And I never really believe in this. And like I told you, like I didn't really go there for that. I think my subconsciousness did, but like not my conscious mind. And all of a sudden, I lost the sense of hunger. And that was fascinating because like imagine that you just feel full. Like right after a good meal, not too full, not any less. You just feel good. And so that feeling ended up lasting about 2 weeks after the 10 days. So I ended up being for, almost, I would say 3 to 4 weeks time without any physical food. And then after the first time, I went back into life, back into the busy world. And then I started losing it because the way I was spending time.
Totally.
So do you see what I'm saying? So it's all about what periods of life we're in as well. And it's okay to eat, right? Like there's nothing, like the most important thing is it's not that you're like doing it because you don't want to eat or you hate food. It's the freedom that you have, that you're not attached to food. It's the freedom, the sovereignty that it gives you as a person, that if food or water end up drying off tomorrow, you are still able to sustain without anything else.
Yeah.
And so the mind flip is you eat for pleasure, not for calories.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, it totally makes sense, man. And I had the same sort of experience and internal dialogue when I did my water fast too, because I'm like, maybe like the appropriate way to look at food is about artistic creation and also like a reason to gather together in community. But so many of us have turned food into something that is completely not that. It's toxic, addictive coping mechanisms in many ways for a lot of people. I'm not saying that's what it exclusively is, but even in the holistic health space, there's such an overemphasis on like, oh, you should eat this diet, you should eat that diet, you shouldn't eat that one, you should eat this. This is the optimal human diet. And it's like, man, once you have this individual experience like you've had with Darkroom a number of times, and just me with only one extended water fast, it's like, yes, it's important, but it's not that important. It's really not as important as your passion, like you said, is the environment that you create for yourself, is the people you spend time with, is how emotionally regulated you are, how much time you're spending in nature, breathing deeply, putting your bare feet on the earth and things like this. Like that's more important than the food, in my opinion. And that's the instant realization I had after doing that extended water fast.
Yeah, and and I find the balance is like one meal a day and liquid in between that feels like very light. To me. And I also find it that whatever that meal is, it's like keep on questioning everything. Because if you retune your instrument, your temple enough, it will just tell you at any given time how much of what. And this is why like we have different cravings, right? There's a reason, to that extreme why that's coming to us. It's all given to us. But again, we're too damn busy to listen to this temple. Like we just keep on going and going. And maybe later we'll talk about process of unhooking, how you can actually unhook from this world so you can get the power back to you. And so, I truly believe that eventually it will be in all of our blueprints. Maybe not this lifetime, but if you look at any spiritual, mystical texts, like we are meant to be fully regenerative. But I think we've lost that through the deception that we're living in. And I think we're finding it back. And I also think we're finding it not just in a physical, mental, emotional, we're finding it in the social structures, right? We're finding it in everywhere in our life. We're bringing that sovereign choice back into your will. And it's exciting.
Yeah, it's incredibly exciting. I also wonder, related to Darkroom too, and I know we'll get into this a little bit later. Again, I've referenced it a couple of times already, Gerald Pollack's work, but just to summarize very briefly, and I'll link in the show notes this paper because it is incredible and it's paradigm shifting regarding whether we actually breathe oxygen or actually we're just breathing in negative charge, which is coming from oxygen molecules. It's an incredible rabbit hole. But if that premise is true, I wonder then in Darkroom, because you're doing it in a communal way with other people who are ostensibly going through the exact same thing as you to different variations, who are becoming more coherent themselves. So you're creating sort of this massive, strong, coherent field. And then you are all also likely either purposefully or naturally as a byproduct of being that experience, really focusing in on your breath. And because you're focusing in on your breath, and Gerald Pollack's work showing that breath itself is giving our bodies negative charge, and we know that the fourth phase water in our bodies are thriving off of negative charge, if that's how you're able to really sustain from a more, dare I say, scientific lens when it comes to what's going on when you're... Did you feel like you were being charged, if you will, when you're doing this?
I actually do deep breathwork sessions. So Jasmine now makes me teach everybody else because she knows my breathwork background. So
Cool.
So now I go in there and I literally end up doing at least one out of the nights that we just go deep into a breathing. And it's so much more powerful because A, the darkness, B, if we introduce any sorts of DMT related breathing techniques, you are gone. And in those states, it's you've got some of the most mystical states like psilocybin, ayahuasca, or any sorts of things without using anything, just yourself. So that is definitely charged by the air. I also think you're also stagnant there, so you don't breathe enough to begin with. So it helps you alkalize your blood, just that motion. And And so I actually do breath at least twice a day, usually morning.
In darkroom?
In darkroom, yeah. And evening. We're like, like going for it. Usually my room is the loud room there until everybody else gets inspired.
Yeah.
But breath is life, by the way. Like, I think breath is what we're born with, and breath is what we die with. But what we do between the first and last breath is literally what determines the quality, the awareness of our life. And so if you come back to your breath, reminder, breath, body awareness, stillness, and silence, you are immediately in a conscious mind. But most of our life, I call it the scrolling disease. We scroll up and down, and sometimes we get ourselves lost in nothingness. And there's nothing wrong with technology, but what can be improved is that, let's say that you're using a phone, right? Instead of us completely being sucked by the device, how about we are aware of our breath, we are aware of our relaxed body, and then the phone becomes just an extension of us instead of us becoming the phone. Does that make sense?
Totally makes
I've
sense.
learned that anytime I remember that even when I'm typing an email, when I'm listening to someone, like being in that presence and awareness, it's like the essence in me connects to the essence in you, which unifies us immediately. So now from separation, we're coming into coherence. And then if we can do that with everything and every interaction and exchange, then all of a sudden, every opportunity becomes a way to re-see things anew and recode them into the reality that we wish to prepare it to,
Yeah, man, so beautifully said. So beautifully said. I have so much spinning in my mind as it relates to coherence too. And like, I just always go back to, I don't like doing this every single episode, but every single episode goes into this, that the logo for the way forward happens to be the top view of the human biofield, or you could say just the field of awareness, the ether, if you will, the etheric field that we're all swimming in together. And it's just so beautiful that like I chose that logo without knowing any of the meaning. I was just like, oh, that looks cool. Now it's like has such a deep meaning. One more question related to Darkroom, then I want to get into what came through to you through Darkroom. So given that the modern scientific community has determined that we only perceive 0.0035% of the available electromagnetic spectrum with our eyes, and that would imply that we're swimming in so many other things that are occurring around us, that many people who have psychic abilities and things like this, of which we all have, I believe, that we just haven't tapped into them. And maybe some people have a higher tendency to tap into them than others, just like some people have a higher tendency to be able to race bikes than other people, right? But given all that, I wonder if that when you do Darkroom, because you aren't perceiving what is the quote available electromagnetic spectrum, because you're devoid of any eye-based sensory experience, some of those other abilities start coming online more readily. I know that, yeah, you're nodding so good. When I talked with Dr. Edith, who's also done several darkroom experiences under Jazz Maheen, so that's a really cool, coincidence there. It's not a coincidence, but you get what I'm saying. She describes the exact same thing, and this is a paraphrased version, but she said after a few days or maybe a few times in darkroom, she could start perceiving this sort of aura of objects and tell where objects were just based on seeing this like very subtle outline of them, even though there was no possible way that she could actually see things because there's no light in there. So I just wanted to hear your experience related to that, and then also how that ties into enhancing intuitive abilities as well.
Oh my gosh, 100%. So it's like a cycle. It's really interesting. And I think Jasmine actually has it timed perfectly like that. So we actually do a microscope blood test before and after. And generally people come with parasites, people come with, very thick blood or cells not moving. And so firstly, just on a physical, biological level, every single person comes out, no parasites, beautiful red blood cells, like unbelievable improvements. Just coherent blood. Yeah. The second part with your eyes, because you're not using them, that immediately goes somewhere else. And that's also really well validated, right? In like if somebody is blinded, they start hearing better, smelling better. And so it's actually crazy. Like day 4, 5, 6, you can smell people across the street, but across the door. Like you can tell if somebody had essential oils. Jasmine actually has to ask, like, to keep it very basic, because otherwise it's so strong.
I could see that.
Hearing, same thing. And usually takes about 3 to 4 days for the natural DMT to start producing and dumping into your brain. Day 4, 5, you stop being able to determine if it's a dream or is it not. Whoa. Like literally, you just become like, wow, did I just dream? And I think that's the high theta states that start coming even while you're awake. What happens in those moments, day 5, 6, 7, Jasmine has to teach you specific meditations, how to tone down the light, because it's so bright. I kid you not, you're like walking around and it's like beams and rays of like lights everywhere. Wow. And so at that point you're like, wow, it's like you're in like a Disneyland,
Wow.
Disneyland of DMT, trip.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
And some people, unfortunately, they get a vertigo that sometimes stays. And I've never had that, thank God, but that can happen too for some, because you lose the sense of your circadian rhythm. Yeah. And the only time you can tell if it's morning or night is you hear the frogs,
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of like that. What else is interesting? When you get out, you literally, like, you can discern every single hair on your body. Like, your eyesight becomes so good. Wow. The colors that you've never seen before, and everything's like, wow, wow, wow. Like a kid, the first time that you've ever, come out of womb. And so that's really interesting. There's also a lot of funny stories. So, you try to exercise there, you try to like move the body, because if you don't move the body enough, you can feel really agitated. Mm-hmm. You got to get the energy out somewhere. So I usually do like, push-ups, like military training, or more like a jail sequence. Yeah. My friend told me that like a jail cell style, whatever you can do.
Essentially what you're doing.
Yeah. Some yoga, some stretches. What's amazing, so she allows us we have to have one of those old iPods, Nanos, for those that have no light. And so you can load it with music or a book. And it doesn't really store much. So I would like load a couple DJ sets and like I just dance. I put the headphones on and I go for hours, which is when I like really like discovered how much, a lot of our, aesthetic dancing that we lead in today's world comes from the dark room. Wow. With me getting in touch with this pure state of ecstasy. That like I understand now like why people take ecstasy, right? From a different perspective, right. That we are ecstasy at the core when we hit those zones, So that's what we now, by the way, do in our events is we allow people to reach these states. We put blindfolds, headphones, silent disco headphones on, and then we imitate basically what I've learned from darkroom in our dance experiences. And so that's really fun. And there's always a fight. One of the rooms has a bathtub, and so like I always like, I want the bathtub one. So you try to like, because it's nice, right? Oh my gosh, I have like a bathtub in the middle of,
sensory
everything.
Deprivation, like DMT increasing, floating in a bathtub.
It's just like,
it's gotta be amazing.
Yeah, and every darkroom is different. So I've done 5 of them. Mm-hmm. So I spent over 50 days in darkness, which is like insane. If I think back, I'm like, how did that happen with time, And how am I keep on going there every year? It's just became my medicine. There's nothing more beautiful that allows you to be in a full stillness, silence, solitude like darkness. And I know people do vipassanas, they do other things. And to me, that's actually harder because you have food. So you then like think and smell and fart after. Yeah. And then you also see people, right? So you're kind of like, if your monkey brain is really active, like you're just like, going through it. This way, you just like either are present or you're in a monkey brain. Like there's like not really anything in between. I actually, so this year is the last one ever. So Jasmine is only bringing people that will be able to take this on, that have been there before. It's in September. And unfortunately, she has a new assignment. So basically, her guides told her that she's going to drop her bodysuit consciously. And she has to finish 2 more books, and I will be bringing that to Miami.
Dude,
so we're working on a dark room.
I was about to ask you. I'm like, please tell me you're bringing it. Okay.
Yes, it's something that I'm so passionate about, and I selflessly have to have it, so that way it keeps on going. But we're going to open one up that's also more accessible. So people can try for 1 day. They can get comfortable 3-day, 6-day, and 9-day. So they'll be kind of like that same rhythm. And we'll be teaching, doing sound healing. We'll be doing breath work. It'll be very immersive. And I want to also biohack the space. So like you have a nice bed, not like there where literally you can move after day 3. So that's something really fun and interesting to end the darkroom with.
Wow, man, that's amazing. I guess one more question. So I'm just so curious about this. The sleep experience. Did you sleep a lot or very little in darkroom?
So you start sleeping a lot because you're just toasted. Time zone, life. I mean, I usually come so exhausted.
Because this was in Thailand, right? Yeah. Okay.
So you're like all flipped upside down. And most of the time I'm literally on a conference call until I like jump into the dark room.
Yeah.
So it's like not the best. Don't recommend it. But our lives, it's like insane. But as soon as I drop in, it does take about 2-3 days of just sleep, restoring. But when you don't eat, I think it's about 60% of your energy goes into digestion. I think 40 to 60%. So if you all of a sudden have that energy, it then becomes the mystical connection. It goes into creativity. And it's actually sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish I can write, because like you can't see, because I would be just like pouring ideas and ideas.
Stream of consciousness.
And you can't even like remember all of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wish it was a bit better like that. I still am working on saving it energetically into like files.
Yeah.
And I start putting like colors on files in my mind, like imprints. But so that's the only side effect is like you can't.
Totally. But one of the things that came through that you remembered is the transformation blueprint. So before we get into the breath, because the rest of this episode we're going to focus on breath and in a way that is very different than some of the other episodes I've done. I've done some episodes on breath and interviewed some incredible people, but the direction I'm going to go with you, I'm so stoked for. So let's talk about the transformation blueprint that came through in one of your darkroom experiences.
Yeah, so it's funny, and I see it so much in what you're going through, and I also see that so much in people that are awakening in this world. We're all going through something very similar. It comes in different phases, but it's like this cyclical way to get in charge of your health, happiness, harmony on every level. Yeah. And so what it was for me, just like for many of us, is first physical health. Right? I had Epstein-Barr, chronic fatigue. I mean, sick every 2 weeks, strep. I mean, just like everything you can think of, mold, and and everything that we're all going through nowadays. And then it was the mental body, like the negative thoughts about myself, the clutter. Then it was the trauma, emotions, and then it really was the spirit. And so, what I've learned is that we go through these cycles for a reason, and it's really up to us how quickly are we going to awake enough to be able to use these cycles as they're coming to us through these experiences, to be able to re-see them, to be able to recalibrate them. And we in biohacking, people talk a lot about biofeedback and neurofeedback, but what I want to talk about is life feedback. Depending on or universal feedback, right? What we put into the field through our actions, through our thoughts and words that end up coming back to us. Now that feedback has a delay. And a lot of us, until we become conscious enough, that delay might be a few months, few days, depending on how aligned at that given moment we are when we're co-creating this. And so this is why, like, sometimes we think, why is this happening to me again? And why me again? Like my whole past was about victimhood and giving the power to my thoughts and emotions. And so what came to me is that if we look at the life from a simple perspective, we operate in these 3 levels. There's the me, there's the we, and then there's the be. Now, me is the individual consciousness made up of your physical health, mental health, emotional health, and your spiritual connection or the intuitive senses that we'll talk about. Then you've got the we, which is the collective consciousness, which is made up of your relationships, your environment, the air, water, soil, everything that's on the outside impacting the inside. And then social structures, which is governments, what we believe in and what do we, go into in this world. And then we have the B, which is the supra consciousness. And if you think about it, it's like layers, right? If we zoom out infinitely, this can go beyond our mental, capacities. And for me, I like to keep it super simple and embodiable. So that way, like in everyday basis, how do we look at the me, the we, and the life, whatever we are, to be able to help ourselves? And so if you let me, I would like to take everyone on a simple self-assessment.
Yeah.
Now, this self-assessment is so simple, and it's all based on learning how to question everything, how to use your senses to guide you. Now, before we do that, we're going to look into these most prominent things in our life, and we're going to use this little process. I call it wake up, clean up, power up, and rest up. Now, what that means, through these cycles, I've learned that it always goes through this little arch, little change. First, you wake up. What that means is a awareness. You start bringing up those things to the awareness that simply don't work, right? So, for example, let's say that you got your blood test and you were low on vitamin D, high on environmental toxins. It gives you data sets. Let's say you have a chronic pain, right? Simple things that you start waking up and bringing them up to the surface. The second part is clean up, which is getting rid of the old. Detox, if you have toxins, transform any sorts of pain, go into movement, start being able to move that energy. And, if you're anything like me, I used to want to keep the old person and also the new person. And guess what? Noah, Aeon, highs and lows. It was this never-ending duality. So it's also learning how to give in, let it go, and surrender to what was. Now, the third phase is powering up. And this is when we go back into offense. We take the driver's seat or vehicle of our own temple, and we accelerate. So we supplement vitamin D if we were low in the first place. We start using different exercises. We start accelerating whatever that, maybe negative thought was to rewire. Now, the last part of this is resting up and repeating this cycle, because if anybody ever told you they're a master at anything, like I always say, I'm master at nothing but the transformational process itself, because it will never cap. We will never, if we stop growing, we came here to never end that expansion. And the minute that we think that we've mastered something, the whole new sequence of things, will smash us back. So that's exciting, because now we can start seeing things as gifts, as a way to surrender, as to move through it instead of running away from it. So wake up, clean up, power up, rest up. It becomes a second nature, and people can call it whatever you call it, but notice it that first it's awareness. Then you got to work with that information, and then you power it up with a new information. The last technology I'll give you is, let's say iPhone or any sorts of, really computer. Whenever we download new software, we have to connect to the internet. Now, let's say that you have a lot of apps that you're not using. And let's say that you're only using few, what does it remind you of? Open apps, unprocessed emotions, negative relationships, things in the background, and it's just running a high CPA, right? It's taking up too much storage. So what we're doing, and this is what we do in our system reset experiences, we literally take people through these processes, through breath, through visualization, to be able to get past it or through it. And so what we're doing when we slow down our breath, when we go back into the stillness and silence and solitude, we're connecting to the inner net. So from internet, it's the internet, changing the brainwave so we can access the subconscious mind, so we can then download new apps, download new softwares, and exit out of the ones that we don't want to use anymore. And that's cleaning up, right? The clutter. So just a little acknowledge that, computers came from us, not the other way around.
Yes.
And everything is about coding, learning how to code your reality through every single situation. So now let's do a little self-assessment, okay? It's going to be so easy. If you want to put it on a paper, feel free, or just like a notebook.
I'm going to walk through too with this.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so what I do is I first write physical health or body for the simplicity. Now you can tune into your body for a moment. And if you have the time, just scan your body and start asking questions. What is working? What is not? Is there any chronic pain? How's your energy levels, especially in the afternoon? Has there been any autoimmune issues? Whatever that might be, and I want you to give yourself a number between 0 and 10. 10, you're crushing it. Your health is optimal. 0, obviously a lot of work to do. And whatever intuitively comes to you, just ask your body, where is my health today? Of course, we can do advanced testing and neurofeedback and all of this, but there's nothing better than your intuition in real life, and learn how to trust that through questioning everything.
Amen. I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah,
Amen.
so I love all of these things, but I always say the most important biohack is to unhack everything you've ever known about all the biohacks, retune that instrument, and then choose from the place of sovereignty, because you choose to do that,
Yes.
So then when it comes to your body, of course, we can have a whole episode, and I think you have plenty of them on healthy nutrition and diet, and go search that, because everybody is different and your intuition will tell you what to follow. The second part is your mental body. Now, let's talk a little bit about the mind. Most people, have a lousy monkey brain. If you're one of them, generally what's been said is that 95% of our thoughts is just a repetition from the past projecting into future. But a study recently showed that 80% of them are negative. So imagine if majority of our world were thinking you're not good enough, or like this is not for you. And imagine that these self-thoughts that are meant to build you up, that are meant to work for you, aka your software that runs the hardware, is at a poor quality, then we got to work this out. And so what I first used to do is I would just write down any negative sentences about myself or about another, would scratch them on a piece of paper, and I would rewrite them, and I would literally be there until I start thinking the way I want to think. It can be as simple as this. Like, we tend to do all these neurofeedbacks and again things, but like it's all within a choice, within your own will. So if you gave yourself a number, 0 to 10, how does this monkey brain or egoic part of you that we need for survival work for you or against you? 10, incredible. 0, a lot of work to do. The third one of the me is emotional body, your emotions. Now, emotions is what makes our life feel real. And, emotions are viewed as a weakness in a lot of cultures, especially in men. And for me, you can ask my wife, like to talk about emotions, it was pulling, things out of me was really difficult for the longest time, until I was like, oh my gosh, like it does help when I talk about it and like feel it and go into it. And so, funny enough, I've learned about emotions that there's different stages. The lowest state is apathy, where we're numb, where we simply don't care anymore. The highest state is joy, happiness, and that's what we came here for. In between, you've got guilt, fear, grief, jealousy, all of the other ones that we're experiencing. And emotions are beautiful when they work for us again. So what I had to do is look back. Who has hurt you? Who have you hurt? Using maybe the Ho'oponopono, or in our sessions, we literally use breath, and we have people face the people that have hurt them or that they have hurt the most, and they breathe through them. They do this it's this clearing exercise, and you can do it at home. You just keep on breathing through these people until you feel that release. But for this time, if you gave yourself a number, 0 to 10, how is your emotional well-being? What do you feel on a daily basis? The fourth one is really interesting, and I've learned this in a psychic village in Brazil. I walk into this village and thinking that I'm going to get this profound, knowledge, and they started off with something so simple. We've got 5 physical senses that get us in trouble, overconsumption, too much senses in general. And then we've got 4 mystical senses or psychic senses that we all have, but we've forgotten how to use them, that connects us to that limitless source of information, God, love, oneness. Now, what they taught me is that the first one is your inner hearing. Now, to discern that, it's not the lousy monkey brain, it's the little voices in the background, maybe telling you, start reading a certain book or listen to this podcast, quit drinking alcohol. Whatever it's telling you, it always has your back, and it will never tell you to slap your neighbor. That's how you know how to discern them. Now, what they taught me is, how do we strengthen it, right? Just like in a muscle in a gym, we start acknowledging it. So, thank you, I heard that. And the magic keyword is what you're going to do about that. And so, what I start doing is, again, I was an entrepreneur, right? I didn't come in there as like this open to everything. I had an open heart, an open mind, and I exactly followed to the T, what they taught me. And within few weeks, my this voice started getting louder and louder, and it started integrating with my egoic mind. And this is that action. So I start understanding what does it mean to basically live in the spiritual, guided that spiritual or energetic in through the body, and then put it into action through the rational, right? Because the mind, the egoic mind, is supposed to help us book a plan or trip, right? So now it was starting to merge, and I was like, wow. The second one we have is our inner feeling. It's the empaths of the world. And if you walk into a room and there was a fight, something doesn't feel right. It's in your body. The third one is inner seeing. This is visionaries of the world that can see things before they happen. And or colors, shapes, auras, right? Different people are gifted with different things. And by the way, there's many other terms for this. I like to keep it really simple, from the clairaudience and so on, into just inner hearing, inner seeing, inner
I like
feeling.
This better.
Yeah, that way we can like put our head around it.
Yeah.
And then the last one is your inner knowing, your intuition. And the way you discern that is when you think you don't know, when you know you do not require to think. You knew that you shouldn't have gone to the party. You knew that that person was cheating on you. It was in every bone of your skin. That one is the hardest one to discern because of the egoic mind can kick in. But each and every one of us are more prominent to one or another. And then what I always say is start testing it, start working it, start playing with it, start trusting it. That's the most important part. And then they will grow. And I am the first one to tell you, like, it really, really works. Like, it's been given to us for a reason. And so I'm not saying I'm always using it. I'm not saying I'm perfect in any, way. But the times I don't use it is when I fail.
I bet these come on like crazy in darkroom.
Oh, just never ending.
Yeah.
Like seeing,
like overwhelming almost.
Too much. Yeah, at times. Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing though. I mean, it's still amazing, especially if you can take that and then integrate it into your life, Yeah, it's incredible. Most of our ancestors ate nose to tail, which means they consumed all parts of the animal, didn't waste really any of the animal, and that means that their diets were naturally rich in essential nutrients like collagen. And unfortunately, most modern diets are severely lacking in essential nutrients like collagen, which is why Paleo Valley made their 100% grass-fed bone broth protein powder. The term grass-fed today is thrown around pretty wildly. It can mean anything from 100% grass-fed to just partially grass-fed to minimally grass-fed and really primarily grain-fed. But Paleo Valley goes the extra mile to ensure their bone broth protein powder is sourced from 100% grass-fed cows. I have here in front of me the chocolate bone broth protein powder, and the ingredients in this are bones and water, organic coconut milk powder, organic cacao bean, organic chocolate flavor, organic monk fruit extract, and Himalayan pink salt. That's it. They also have a vanilla flavor, and they also have an unflavored version, but I am partial to the chocolate flavor. It tastes just like the chocolate milk that I used to have as a kid, except for it's not toxic. It's actually really good for you. I've been shopping with Paleo Valley for years. I've used their bone broth protein powder, their 100% grass-fed beef sticks, also their organ supplements, and I've found their products to be nutrient dense, high quality, natural, and made with integrity. So if you're ready to upgrade your health in just 30 seconds a day and get this essential nutrient collagen, head to the show notes or visit paleovalley.com/the way forward. And when you check out, a 15% discount will be automatically applied to your order. Experience the difference of truly natural, nutrient-dense, 100% grass-fed bone broth protein powder and so many more incredible products with Paleo Valley. At this point in history, community is essential. And as the world shifts in ways we never imagined, finding spaces that foster true connection with like-minded people is more important than ever. Join us this year for our third annual Confluence Festival, May 7th through the 12th in Bandera, Texas. Confluence is a transformational gathering where a like-minded community comes together on a stunning regenerative farm just outside of San Antonio, offering the perfect opportunity to connect deeply with nature, paradigm-shifting knowledge, and one another. With multiple offerings running simultaneously, Confluence features a dynamic mix of lectures, workshops, live music, movement classes, and more, covering topics from circadian biology and consciousness to dome building and regenerative agriculture. Attendees are encouraged to CYOA, choose your own adventure, ensuring a truly personalized experience. This year, we are so stoked to welcome Dr. Diane Hennessy-Powell, a leading neuroscientist featured in the viral Telepathy Tapes podcast series, sharing her research on the science of telepathy and expanded consciousness. Dr. Gerald Pollack will reveal his groundbreaking work on the fourth phase of water, reshaping how we understand biology and energy. We'll also be joined by Dr. Kelly Brogan, Eileen McCusick, Veda Austin, Tom Barnett, and many, many more incredible workshop leaders and lecturers. Plus, we'll have live musical performances from Lincoln Jesser, Headflux, DJ Mike Winter, Joel Raffiti, and several other incredible musicians and performers. And when it comes to nourishment, we believe food is medicine. I promise you will not find better food at any event you attend. The full-scale restaurant on-site serves farm-to-table meals with ingredients grown and raised right on the property or sourced from local farms, providing a deeply nourishing experience for both body and spirit. And our event accommodations are designed for every comfort level. Camp under the stars, stay in a cozy tiny home, enjoy luxurious glamping, or park your RV. If you prefer a hotel, we've got you covered with nearby hotel options as well. And your whole family is welcome. Our unschooling village, led by experienced guides, provides engaging activities for kids aged 2 through 12, ensuring that parents can fully immerse themselves in the experience while their little ones learn and play in a supportive environment. Come be a part of an unforgettable event surrounded by like-minded community where we gather in celebration of health, freedom, and coherence. Visit confluenceevent.com or head to the show notes to learn more and reserve your spot today.
Yeah, so now if you can give yourself a number, 0 to 10, how connected you are to these spiritual senses or this original source vibration. So that completes the me. Then now let's head into the we, the collective. And I'm going to keep it simple for this time being, but just so you know, you can add anything that you really care about with this. The next part is relationships. And, you know, in our events, we see relationships being the hardest and toughest across the board. Emotional bodies and relationships. It's really wild that most people have the biggest issues with that. And if you were to imagine the 3 to 5 people you spend the most time with, I want you to close your eyes for a moment and just imagine them around you, and you can just look at them in the eyes. And when you look at those people in the eyes, just ask, do they bring the best of me? And do I bring the best of them? Or is there some work to do? And so again, everything happens through questioning. Make that be your superpower. Does it work? Does it not? Is it limited? Limitless? If you're unsure in life, what would love do now? And if you just gave yourself a number about the quality of your relationships, 0 to 10, whenever that feels, allow it. And of course, take that time. I love taking this time to keep on recalibrating. And that gives you a baseline. One thing I've learned about relationships that's really interesting and applies to all our relationships is these 7 stages. We first fall in love. It's that romance, that excitement, that butterflies. We then go into commitment, girlfriend, boyfriend, or shape a new LLC, start a new yoga membership. Then we go into the 3rd phase, which is broken vase. This is when we start seeing things that we didn't see before. No bathrooms, maybe underfunded LLC, maybe that wife or girlfriend is acting just like her father. Like, where's this coming from, right? We're coming back. The 4th one is ordeal. And this is that state where, I'll sing this. Should I stay or should I go? The never-ending highs and lows and up and downs and painful and I love you, I hate you. I love you, I hate you. And that's still from that me. And this can last 25 years marriage. Or somebody, let's say, a doctor or attorney that, is doing that just because of the finances, right? Security, but has had this long time calling, for a new job or opportunity, but won't leave it, right? It's that up and down. The 5th stage is collapse. This is when we make it or break it. This is where most people divorce, they end the journey, they bankrupt the company or whichever shapes. And then the 6th stage is the new welcome from that me-centric world into the we. And that is surrender. this is the first step to any relationship, that we can allow ourselves to step into neutrality before we take actions, where we can actually see it from both sides, right? And be like, instead of what you're doing wrong, what I can change to make this better, to make this different. And then the seventh stage is true love. It's true union, where it has no bounds of whatever. It's directionally dancing in that beautiful love that can be repeated or expanded infinitely long. And so that's something beautiful that I've learned about relationships, to find us in whichever that place we might be. And then, so that's fifth. Let's do sixth one, your career. Because I think a lot of people care about career, and whatever it's your life mission, purpose, the way you make your means, and just think about it for a moment and give yourself a number, 0 to 10, how connected you are to your purpose, to your mission. And again, like I said before, you can keep on going, whatever, things you want to write. For this time being, if you can add all of them together, so the numbers, and then divided by 6, divided by whatever number that you are going through. And it gives you a nice running average through which you can start with. And this is part of my, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly cycles. I call it the process of unhooking, where I come back into myself and I reassess these most important cycles in my life, and it becomes a second nature. It's like, how do you feel? Like, you start talking to everything, because everything is energy. Everything is, made up of atoms that are just a tiny bit matter that we're shaping and mixing and moving, right? And so, once a day, especially the first half an hour or an hour of the day, I spend it just by myself. I put the cell phone aside, because what happens when you wake up and you go on your phone? You tense up, you put all your consciousness on the phone, scroll, and then you wonder why you have anxiety at the end of the day, right? So I start a day with, how am I doing? What would make my heart sing today? And, today I went to yoga, then I went into a lake. I did a breathwork up right by this beautiful, area nearby. And I woke up at like 5 naturally. And then by the time my girls woke up, it was like 7:30. And I had literally 2.5 hours this morning just by myself.
That's exactly what I do in the morning too. So it's literally the exact same thing.
It makes you who you are. And it makes you remember who you are. And also, this came from every time I would go to darkroom in the past, the regular life would slap me in the face. And then just like if we go to retreats and we then lose all of the energy, right? And we then go back into our old patterns. So what I've learned is, in order for me not to burn out anymore, I follow this cycle. So once a day, then I do the same thing once a week. So I physically detox, digitally detox, the first half of the day just by myself in nature. Second half of the day, bring up the munchkins, the kids and wife. Once a month, I look at the past month and also the following month, and I take 3 to 4 days, completely disconnect.
Amazing.
And then once a year, I spend 10 days in darkness, and that kind of connects that whole, cycle. And so what I've learned is, when I follow this cycle, I do not burn out. And even though we do over 100 events a year, literally all across the world, we live the busiest life we could ever imagine, even from the past, we feel more balance in harmony than ever. Wow. And I think that's really, really beautiful when we do those things.
Yeah, man, that totally makes sense. It sort of allows you, like I said, to zoom out. This is just a different way, rather than going to a samurai camp or something like that. This is another way to be like, zoom out, or even like go more deeply in. What am I experiencing with this, right? To sort of reevaluate. And I love that in a very atypical, non-corporate sense, you're doing evaluations, not from a like, oh, let's just check the box and go through 1 to 5. Yes, you have a scale here, but it's more of a scale guided by your inner sense and getting in tune with you and how you truly feel and what your experience really is, which I think is so incredibly important. And I want to emphasize the point that you made about like biohacking and things like this. I love that, as someone who is a fan of biohacking as yourself, you also recognize that a lot of people in the biohacking space sort of give too much power away to that whole paradigm without checking back in with self and making conscious health decisions from here, because that also relates to everything that you were just saying. I think that's such an important point.
Yeah, because there is no good or bad, right? And so even though people think that they're being good with using something because of someone said so, right? Who's to say that that works for your any given time? And we're never and ever changing beings, right? Living a physical or spiritual beings living a physical experience. And so even though I've had beautiful results with it, it all leads me back to breath. Literally every psychedelic I've ever taken comes back to breath. Everything that I've seeked out there, it all goes back into inhale, exhale. That's the pause. That's the essence. And that's also, you want to get in touch with your prana, your pranic flow. Literally just, and you don't even have to close your eyes. Just slow down your breath and focus on this little pulsation in and around your body. You relax your body enough, and there's this little rhythm. Tune into that rhythm. That's prana, that's source. And so as you can see, it's subtler, right? From this high-pitched talking,
totally,
all of a sudden here. And that is that beingness. So more we can be bathed in this presence, in this pulsation throughout our life, throughout our day, then we're connected. Wise men once taught me, it's not about the age that you're in. It's about the levels of vitality and awareness you have to this pulsation, to this essence. So you could be 100 and be more aware than a 17-year-old because you sense this, feel it. And that's what makes our life, possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful, man. And it's actually a perfect segue too, because the next thing that I wanted to talk about was the endogenous DMT that comes from the lungs. So from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong on this, there's a lot of emerging research into how our lungs actually produce endogenous DMT, which makes sense for how many of these deeper breathwork experiences can feel virtually identical to ayahuasca ceremonies and things like this. So can you talk to me about that a little bit and any experiences you've had or you've guided related to that?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, from a breathwork style, it's really important that we don't do these states for achieving these states, because a lot of breathing nowadays happens that people go in and they just go to cook themselves, and they chase this state, and there's no different than chasing a DMT or bufo or ayahuasca. And by the way, the same thing is happening a lot with the psychedelic community. Is this justification for it being a medicine, but then like using it on overly basis?
Oh, dude, I've talked about that on a number of episodes too. And it's so prevalent in Austin where people are bastardizing the intentionality in the shamanistic cultures and sort of pulling these things into circles that they don't belong in the context that they don't belong in, which in my opinion, honestly opens up people to some very harmful energies that then leach onto the sort of spiritual void that you create by doing them in a very unintentional way.
I have so much to share on this and so agree with you. And, the highest state of ego is spiritual ego, is spiritual illusionist.
Yeah.
And I always say this, we become so subconsciously conscious that we're conscious of a consciousness itself. It's a mind fuck. That's supposed to be. And basically it's dangerous. And, I've worked with these beautiful shamans from South Africa. They don't even shamans. It's like the easiest thing to really call them. They're like gatekeepers to love, to this gate, and they do ibogaine cleansing ceremonies. And it's a 10-day process where you actually go through conventional detox and cleanse first before you can even take that. And I had a really lovely experience because my brother was an addict. He was in a gang. He was really, really suffering, and they literally I sent him there and they brought him back. And then I went there myself with my wife as well to experience this. And what they shared with us is that basically ayahuasca, cannabis, even psilocybin plant is extracting, not plant, the consciousness is extracting from the ways we know it because it's being hijacked by misuse, by look what happened to cocaine, right? If you think about cocaine coming from mambe, right? Or like being a pure green,
And I've had that before, and it's completely different than what I would imagine cocaine to be.
Or tobacco, right? Into cigarettes. So there is this deep deception in our world that is essentially running us, in around the circle from truth. And so the same thing when you run out of the bad things, so to speak, right, to where you can hijack the medical world and all of the things that we're seeing, you are moving into the spiritual world. And so, New Age, the term has been literally designed by the system to deceive us in so many ways. And not saying that all the New Age people are deceiving us, but saying that from a place of caution and really understanding and using this intuition to really test what that information is coming to you, with that. Now, with that being said, I think I've had beautiful experiences, but I had to stop using it because I've seen.
When you say using it, you're talking about not the
psilocybin.
breath. Okay, psilocybin.
Sorry. I stopped using majority of psychedelics. I think every once in a while, maybe microdose. It's very, very subtle when I feel that.
Have you ever tried Amanita muscaria? Okay, so that I don't want to go off on a huge tangent, but I have a lot of respect for that specific mushroom because it cannot be bastardized and harvested elsewhere. It can only be harvested from its original source, which means that God is literally the only one source creator providing it, and only in that context can it be used, which I really appreciate.
Yeah. Well, so what was revealed to me in one of those things is it opens up this portal to darkness, and especially in a people that don't understand how to work with spirit. So this is when my shamanic roots came back in, was understanding how to navigate this, because I literally feel them, see them, and it sucks you in, and it literally was coming back through the back of my heart. So they're trying to attack you from the back, and what a bastards, by the way, in so many ways, because they know you're not watching and looking. And so when you open yourself up and you don't know how to protect it from this place of your beingness, imagine someone doing it for the first time, right? It's this portal of entities that are just going through you. And so to finish it with these two women in South Africa, they're saying that their hardest cases are not people that are coming from drug addiction, cocaine addiction, and so on. They literally said specifically ayahuasca people that they don't even want to work with these people anymore because of the level of darkness that it's been pulling in. And again, I don't, there's so much beauty in that. There's so many releases, but we really, really, really need to question, is it coming from a place of this new escapism, this new thinking that we're gonna, we're chasing a high? And I know you're listening now, you're probably, there's a lot of, burning sensation in your body. And I've had the same because I misused it myself until I truly understood, wow, this is not, we're using it on a different note.
Yes.
Yeah,
it totally makes sense.
So sorry, back to
No,
DMT.
I really appreciate that. And because I wanted to get into later that even to some degree, depending on your intention, when it comes to breath, it can be used as a tool to go more deeply into your emotions and deeply into yourself. But likewise, it can also in some contexts be used as a tool to, I feel this strong emotion coming on. I'm just going to escape it by using my breath. I'm going to do a certain breathwork technique so I don't have to feel that emotion. So I do want to talk about that later. I know that it's, I would say more prevalent when it comes to this psychedelic space. And I've talked about this at length on other episodes too, where so many people in this space are avoiding doing the work or avoiding feeling or avoiding facing certain aspects about themselves or their relationships, et cetera, by using plant medicine in a variety of ways or animal medicines like bufo. But that's not always the case. And again, they do have their place. They are beautiful in their own right in a very intentional way if coming into them with the right intention with a shaman, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's my opinion as well. So with that being said, going back to the DMT, now that we have that context, you can achieve those same states without any external input. So could you talk to me about that a little bit?
No, absolutely. So there's a variety of techniques. I think the well, I don't say first one, but the first mass one used, I was holotropic breath, in the 70s, designed by Stanislav Grof from Czech Republic task when LSD was banned. How do we get and access these states without using LSD? And that's the prolonged, deep, long breathing in and out. You just continue for anywhere from 15 to 25 minutes until you basically reach these states. So that's kind of like been, I think, the foundation to this, like the beginning. There's a lot of other breathing styles like Tumo breathing in a ways from the Tibetans that basically Wim Hof method was essentially designed by.
Oh, wow. And so Wim Hof came from that.
Wim Hof came and was inspired from Tumo breathing. And essentially, the classical Wim Hof breath is, you breathe 30 to 40 times, you hold on exhale, then you hold it on inhale. And generally what has been, known, and this is not scientific, this is kind of just really coming from a place of practice and breath, is that when you hold your breath on inhale after extended part of breathing, now you can do this at home, but I highly advise, if you've never done deep breathing, start with just 30 to the 60 rounds, never standing, never driving, never in water, very, very crucial, in a safe space. And essentially you can just keep on breathing deeper on inhale, no force on exhale. So the classical retention Wim Hof breath. But at the end of the round, let's say it's 30 seconds, it could be up to, multiple minutes. Some of the transcendent states come at 6 to 8 minutes is when it starts kicking in. And I sequence it in our sessions is we start short and we kind of build people up into those states so it's sustainable. But at the end of this breath, you hold your breath on inhale and you basically squeeze your core. You flex your legs, you lift up your legs, you lift up your head, you flex your arms, and you tilt your arms. You lock it in just like this. And then from the center of your core, you squeeze that energy up. You imagine this fluid, as a lot of people seen, is traveling up your spine.
The cerebral spinal fluid.
The cerebral spine fluid, all the way into your brain, and then it causes, for some people, a loss of consciousness for a little bit, not in a negative way. Some people call it a pass out, but it's an overload. It's a lightheadedness. And that can be 20 seconds, 5 seconds, and sometimes even longer if you breathe long enough or you repeat it long enough. And so I actually find this breathing, it induces DMT. It brings you into these deep states. And then further longer you do it, and also more you repeat it, you're kind of building that energy up. And this I find the fastest way to experience that DMT, feeling.
So you guide people through this in some of your events?
Yeah, usually amazing. It's more advanced when we work with, especially workshops, retreats, and we use this one especially for emotional body. So I find is any stuck energy. So you know how I told you about like people face their demons. They face the people that they have hurt. Yeah. They face the people that have hurt them. I also have people repeat traumatic situation. And so like imagine you're breathing, right? You're hyperventilating in a long, deep rhythmical state. So that way also you're keeping the nervous system, in balance. So we actually don't do too much of hyperventilating. It's all, using that rhythmical time. And then you're going through these states through your thought, through your emotion, and then through the breathing. And that's kind of what I found it as the medicine is that we take people on a journey that it's not about the breath, it's actually about the journeys that they're facing, which is all based on the me, we, be. So we literally apply it to the most prominent areas, cool. And then we rewire these things in our life. That's cool. That's really cool. Yeah, and so this literally you can see colors and lights, and I have other techniques which I don't want to share this because it would be unsafe, I know some of the listeners will take it home and it's something that we don't want to share, but those are a true reset. Like you actually completely lose sense of yourself and you go into that DMT state. Yeah, I think the breath work I did, it's one of my friends, Andrew Genovese, it was a 2.5 hour breath work experience, and he's been doing it for a while, and that's what it felt like, man. Like there was instantaneous, without me, guiding it, revisiting of very random instances in my childhood that I had totally forgotten about, like just instantaneously happening in my mind's eye. Very cathartic release of emotions and things like this. So I've had something I think that might be similar to what you're describing. And it's amazing because it can be totally achieved just by the breath. Like it really is incredible. One thing I wonder, and this is pure speculation, like, okay, so if our lungs are producing endogenous DMT, and if what Gerald Pollack is saying
or his research is indicating is true, that breath is more about receiving negative charge from the oxygen molecules. I wonder then if you're doing this approach where you're breathing in really deep but only slowly releasing, or in some cases not releasing at all, if that's simply just giving your body more time to pull in the negative charge from the oxygen molecules that you've just breathed in. But then also, because you're not exhaling, that DMT that is made endogenously, especially on the deep inhale, is then being released throughout your system. And because you're not exhaling it as much, it's going more deeply into your system. Does that make sense to you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for sure. And I also think if you, the squeezing with the cerebral fluid, I think...
the cerebral spinal fluid.
The liquid is everything, right? We were talking about water and whatever, it's your urine.
I did a whole episode on the cerebral spinal fluid too. So as it relates to this, Have you heard of Mauro Zapatera?
No.
Dude, I'll send you that episode afterwards. Yeah. It's incredible because he's a MD neuroscientist who's studying cerebral spinal fluid in a laboratory context, but as it relates to this. It's incredible. Sorry.
Wow.
Go ahead though.
No, yeah. So I truly think that, and also I think it's the CO2, because when you're holding breath on exhale, it's lack of CO2, right? So it's a certain one extreme. When you hold your breath on inhale, it's overload of CO2. Mm-hmm. And so I also think that balance between CO2 and O2 that we're having in our body is really crucial in our health. And it's so many times, if I feel anxiety, if I feel iffiness, you just kind of like agitation, I actually find that slow release exhale. So I would do like 30 to 60 pumps, right? Like inhales and exhales. I would hold my breath on inhale and I would actually relax my body. So I wouldn't even squeeze. And then every time that the CO2 limits in my body tells me, it's time to breathe, I exhale, but tiny bits at a time. So it's like a slow control release. So it's like you hold it and then just hold it again. Hold it again. And then you can just hold it as long as possible. And we do this in our sessions and it's an incredible release. Like you immediately feel this like sense of calmness overflowing. And that's literally what happens if you ingest CO2. At first it's a fight or flight induction, but then it's this calmness that comes through you. And so I think that's our cells being able to observe more oxygen. And I think, in that process, there's so many things that we don't know that are happening.
Totally.
But for me, breath, it's chi. It's chi in, it's chi out. And where chi goes, the energy flows through the intention. And that's why, like, if we just start paying attention and observing the inhales, the exhale, that pulsation, we can fill ourselves up and nourish ourselves. And that goes back to the pranic conversations we've had, is that self-regenerative mechanism turns back on.
Yeah. It's amazing because I sent you the Gerald Pollack paper, and he talks about negative charge or electrons. I think that's synonymous with chi, life force energy, because it's ultimately like you go out in nature, the more scientific community would say, oh, we're receiving negative ions from the earth. We're receiving electrons from the earth. I don't even know about the whole particle thing. I just look at it as we're receiving negative charge from the earth, or we're communing with God, with source, with creator in that act. And what sustains our bodies from a scientific context, according to Gerald Pollack's work, is that negative charge. That's what increases our body's ability to hold potential energy. So it's literally synonymous with chi, prana, life force. That's what it is. And it's amazing that you read that paper and you're like, yeah, this totally makes sense. And it's because, you've always described it as chi, life force, prana. That's what we're thriving off of when it comes to being really in tune with our breath.
You know what's funny is for me, I always come from the intuition. So like my brain is not scientific. Like it doesn't work.
Mine
that
can
way.
Be overly scientific.
Yeah, and which is incredible because I like admire people that can do that. So like I go out there, I like experience it, I do the whatever needs to be done, and then I'm like, this makes sense, but this makes sense and that. So I'm more like an integrator.
Yeah.
And then I find someone, like we were followed by a group of neuroscientists a few years back in Australia for our events. And then they were like, oh my gosh, like we measured, the brain waves, we measured the left, right brain hemisphere, how it's interconnecting. They saw neuroplastic changes in our attendees. They saw new habit formation. They saw complete coherence when we were doing the coherent breathing and exercises. Like it went up and like stay there, with HeartMath, and they also had EEG devices. So it was like, wow! It validates everything that I thought it's doing, right? But like in real life.
Yeah, dude, that's actually a good segue into since you brought up heart math, another thing that I wanted to discuss with you. So I just did an episode with Dr. Stephen Hussey on the true purpose of the human heart, and I highly encourage people who are listening, watching, to check out that episode. If you haven't yet, it's incredible. But one of the interesting things about the heart is that, assuming that they're correct in this, and I do think that they are for a number of reasons, metaphysically and physically, scientifically and spiritually, that the heart has the largest electromagnetic field of all the organs in the body. And there's something to be said about using the breath, if the purpose of breathing is to achieve more life force, chi, prana into our bodies, pull that into our bodies, and then focusing our awareness as we're breathing on our heart, because then as we focus in that chi, prana, life force energy, and we're pointing our inner awareness to our heart, we're then accessing the larger electromagnetic field of our bodies, and then doing that in a group of people. That's why when you do these breathwork experiences with other people who are focused on their heart while they're breathing, it creates such a palpable, strong, coherent field that like everyone in the room can feel it. I don't know if you've thought about that, and that's not really a question, but
no, it's insane. We use variety of heart breathing throughout the entire session. So what you're saying is like incredible. So for example, at the end of each event, we bring people, they hold their hands together. They're all in a circle way after our dance. And we go into a coherent meditation. And so I literally have everybody visualize this vortex inside their heart. So they...
hold on. Do you know that the heart is a vortex?
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you knew that. I'm like, whoa,
but I didn't.
That's wild.
So that was another one of those crazy things that I like been visualizing, but I had no idea, right?
Wow.
And then somebody recently told me this. But so I literally have, they inhale love from within, and then they exhale it out through your hands, through the palms, through the electricity of our biomasses mixing together. Then we do a healing circle where I literally bring people into the center of it, and people are through their breaths creating this torus field where they're being bathed at the same time with this field. We also, at the beginning of our session, we all do a heart mat breath to bring into the heart-brain group coherence. And then I also do this exercise where, and this is really beautiful, if you ever want to go back into light, you imagine these rivers of love. So coming down through your energy centers, filling up your body, coming up, and then until you become light with everything else around you. So you just expand these rivers of love, and you diminish yourself into oneness with it all. So it's funny. I would love to speak to him to like measure what actually happens when we're doing this heart work, because from what I understand, its heart is 100,000 times more magnetic or electric than your brain.
Something like that, right? I know for sure that at the least, the heart's electromagnetic field is much stronger than that of the brain, which is really interesting because the heart is a smaller organ than the brain. And it's also far more coherent than the electromagnetic signature of the brain, which is really incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that all goes back to the heart being a vortex. And oh man, there's so many pieces with that. My mind just spins on this. It's so cool. It's so cool to think about.
But what in the heart is everything. It's the first thing that gets shaped, right? When we're being developed through urine, right?
Yeah.
That's another crazy thing. Recycling and using stem cells of urine that is building us up. Right. But so then I think all the keys are also in through there. And so, this is what's so funny. Like I would read things, but like my mind is always like, okay, but like show me the proof, or like, okay, what does that actually mean? And it's kind of what I made my life about is that somebody has this new tool or idea or thing. And so I'm like, okay, how do we embody it? Right. Because it goes back to like psychedelic conversations. You can have the most mystical and craziest experiences all on breath, but what are you going to do about it tomorrow when you go back into your boss and, whoever that boss is, maybe, doing the same cycle again, and then like you're unhappy again. And then you're just thinking, when am I going to get that feeling again?
Totally.
Instead of like bringing that moment into life,
integration,
breathe through it and speak to them, relax through it. And like, that's where the freaking lessons are. It's not up here. It's like down here that we came here for.
Totally, man. I love that you said that too. It's all about integrating it into your reality. Forget the exact quote, but someone said to me like, you'll know you're conscious if you can maintain a state of coherence without escaping from a situation, without like becoming too involved in the minutia of the situation, if you're in the midst of a really, really, really traumatic situation with like your wife and kids or something like that, or your kids are just screaming, you might have a pregnant wife who's hungry and like the house is a mess and finances are all messed up. Can you maintain your lucidity? Can you process the emotions that are coming through, digest them, transmute them, and still maintain that coherence afterwards in that situation? That's the sign of someone who's a spiritual master relative to someone who goes and meditates in a cave for 10 years, in my opinion.
Yeah, I unfortunately had to go through that.
Yeah.
After my Orange Theory days, and I decided to live in service, I went to the other side, and I literally I said, I hate money. Why is money here? I went to the too spiritual side. And guess what? Within a couple of years, I lost everything. I woke up one day and every single one of my bank accounts frozen or below zero.
Wow.
And there was literally a point of time where I was doing these workshops where we had days not being able to feed my kids with food. So I was fasting to be able to do that. And I lived from workshop to workshop, from session to session, where literally we would wait for the income from the sessions. And so many times the money would not even make below the zero because it was so negative that we were literally like this. But I truly believe it all happened. It never changed me. It never defined me for the means, right? Like the highs and the lows, to be able to strip away and understand both sides of the spectrum.
Totally.
And I think it's rough, but we don't have to learn like this anymore. We have to realize that you don't have to learn through the gutter. You can learn through love, but you have to take the steps to decide to consciously see it and not running away from it.
Well, I think you're a perfect example of that though too, because now you've done 50 days in darkroom, and yes, you go do those experiences, but you integrate them back into your life and you take insights from there and bring them back. And you're also continuing to look at, how do I take that experience there and not make it to where I'm chasing a feeling, but how do I integrate that and help other people have this experience well, so that it impacts their lives positively on a daily basis? Like, that's a completely different approach than escaping to go do breath work because I, can't face this experience that I'm having right now. And that's like a perfect segue into the next thing that I wanted to discuss. And I know I alluded to this earlier, is the difference between using breath as a tool to go more deeply into yourself and using breath as a coping mechanism to escape. Where's the line between that, and how do you see the difference between the two?
Yeah, so, so without breath, you're death.
Yeah.
So that's a good baseline. I think we all agree to.
We need it either way.
Yeah.
We literally need it.
So either way, you gotta get on this. It's the one thing that
right.
I haven't met many people that.
Yeah, I don't know of anyone who's like what would be the opposite of a breatharian, like someone who is like, I don't do breath and I do everything else. No, it's
source or spirit, right?
Exactly.
And who knows?
Right.
So that's a good baseline. Now, I like to bring breath into two buckets if we make it really simple. There's the subtle breath and then there's the deep breath, right? Subtle breath can be box breathing. It can be the 6x6, 4-7-8, 3-6-9, different rhythms that help you regulate and keep you in parasympathetic nervous state, which, we're chronically living in stress. So that is something that I highly advise go back to them as frequently as possible as a tool. Because I think that is not escapism. I think that is actually going into your body. Now, then you've got the deep breath, which in a lot of ways can induce the same states, which you want to go into it with intent. So a lot of people, unfortunately, and I've seen this even in our events, they come in lightly on microdose or something. And we actually, we let these people go. Like I'm so
good for you,
determined by being pure, because it's completely misses the whole point, what we're teaching. Now, when we see people, going still through that, we still help them, right? Like, I mean, they actually need more help, right? It's really sad. And these are our brothers and sisters, but, not in that field that we're creating. So I think questioning, writing, preparing, and really going into each breath intentionally is the key. And this is why, I never do breath just because. Like, to give you a little example, like, of my morning breathing. So I would do, let's say 30 to 50. I don't count it anymore. I just keep on going until it feels right. And then I generally, I do a combination of different styles. So if I feel like I'm a little bit anxious, I focus on deeper exhale, shorter inhale. So it would be something like 4 seconds out and then 2 seconds in. So it's still with deep saturation, but more on the exhale than inhale. And so I would blow it out 30 to 50 times, and then I would either hold it on inhale or exhale.
It makes a lot of sense because I look at anxiety as more too much frenetic energy in your body that you need to release, versus something like depression or even apathy or something like this is the opposite of that. You need more life force energy inside of you that is regulated and that is coherent. So would that be something that you would want to do deeper inhale and then less exhale in order to excite your system? You know what I mean?
Yeah, energize your system. Yeah, I actually love your point of view on that. That's really lovely. And also, so there is a scientific breath that's been proven that if you ever want to calm down your nervous system instantly, it's a 2 seconds in, 4 seconds out, or 4 seconds in, 8 seconds out. You double the exhale.
Makes sense.
So,
it totally makes sense.
That is that. And I think it works the same with depthness. This has been done for the subtle breathing, but for me, it works the same with a deep breathing. And the key for me is on the holds is when for example, I would imagine I extend my legs. I imagine my legs becoming roots, like a tree, and connecting to the center of earth. So that would be like grounding.
I do the same thing in my Qigong. So I do Qigong every morning. Yeah. That's what I do in Qigong.
My gosh.
So I do the like 7 energy centers of Qigong, which is a little bit different than like the chakra system. And 2 of them are the feet. And when I go to the feet, that's the exact same thing that I do.
I love it.
Yeah.
We should do a morning routine together.
That'd be amazing. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, no, so that I also imagine a source like a golden light filling up my body, like a bucket of light. And I then imagine any excessive, like creating this little like a waterfall coming out of my stomach, and then shaping a little golden egg around me. And so a lot of people actually ask me constantly, what do you do to protect yourself? To protect means to fear. So you don't have to protect anything if you are in your field. So you are love, you are eternal, you are infinite. You step into that power through breath, through relaxation. You hold that field, then you never have to worry about entering into the field. It's the fear that opens up the field. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense.
So that would be like, for example, my first round. Then the second round, I love working with Paul Selig's The Word. I am the Word.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I just reached out to Paul Selig like 2 months ago trying to get him on my podcast.
Amazing. Yeah. He is a lovely, lovely soul. I've been working with his work for the past 10 years. And we actually originally helped him with his marketing when he was getting started. And we had him at our right next to our Orange Theory in Atlanta.
Wow, that's crazy.
To speak.
What a small world.
But his work is really tremendously recoded my existence. It's a body felt, especially from the energetic perspective. And so so long story short, every round I would connect into different things that come to me. I would question things, I would reassess, and then I would visualize at the end of the rhythm, my day ahead. And so as you can see, every round of breath I go into, it has an intention. It serves a purpose. And so just like we take vitamin C, right? Vitamin D, it's an information that we're ingesting in. So the same way I use the breath to get me into the state so I can receive that information. So it's that opening.
Yeah. For you to be able to receive information better, essentially.
Yeah, to be able to receive, perceive, aware, whatever that is that we're working with. Because again, breath is literally the door keys to everything, every little thing in our life. Because through the breath, you access states. Through the breath, you access God. Through the breath, you are also scared. You run away, right? Like literally, breath has the keys to everything. And we're finally starting to realize that.
For generations, our ancestors lived in harmony with nature, thriving on a nose-to-tail approach to nourishment. Organ meats, often called nature's multivitamin, were a staple, providing essential nutrients that supported energy, brain function, skin, gut health, and reproductive vitality. Yet today, these deeply nourishing foods are largely missing from modern diets, leaving many of us unknowingly depleted. Let's be real though, most of us aren't eating organ meats the way our ancestors did. Whether it's the taste, texture, or simply a shift away from traditional foods, we've lost touch with this vital source of nourishment. And that's where Paleo Valley's grass-fed organ complex comes in. It's an easy way to reconnect with ancestral wisdom and replenish the nutrients we're meant to thrive on. Sourced from grass-fed cows on small regenerative farms in the US, this blend includes liver, heart, and kidney, freeze-dried to preserve their full nutritional integrity. No fillers, no synthetic processing, just pure, bioavailable nourishment. Those who incorporate the grass-fed organ complex notice more energy, balanced moods, and renewed vitality, sometimes within days. If this speaks to you, you can explore more by visiting the show notes or heading to paleovalley.com/thewayforward. And in this case, forward is fully spelled out. So paleovalley.com/theway, FORWARD, and a 15% discount will be automatically applied at checkout. In nearly all cases with modern health systems, you're waiting months for appointments only to spend a mere 10 minutes with a doctor who quickly hands out a generic diagnosis that is likely rooted in a total misunderstanding of health and causes, and then you're offered a one-size-fits-all medication or invasive treatments with unpleasant side effects. If this sounds all too familiar, consider a different approach with the New Biology Clinic, founded by Dr. Tom Cowan, a respected natural health doctor, author, and speaker. Dr. Cowan's holistic perspective on health and wellness and a deep understanding of the true nature of health and disease sets this clinic apart. With the New Biology Clinic, it's not about quick fixes and suppressing symptoms. The practitioners take time to understand your unique story, recognizing that health is unique to the individual and that illnesses have a variety of causes, physically and metaphysically. Members of the New Biology Clinic enjoy a flat monthly fee that includes a range of valuable services like health consults as needed, practitioner-led live streams on diverse health topics, access to a members-only resource library, and multiple live group sessions every month. These sessions cover fitness, breathing integration, biofield tuning, guided meditation, EFT tapping, and much more. Unlike traditional healthcare systems that thrive on frequent visits, prescriptions, treatments, and suppressing symptoms, the New Biology Clinic's motivation is to make you healthy and keep you that way. Visit newbiologyclinic.com to learn more and use code THEWAYFORWARD for $50 off your account activation. If you're a member of The Way Forward, email hello@thewayforward.com to receive $150 off your account activation. Your journey to genuine healing begins here. So I want to talk about your system reset, and I want to do this Tree of Life meditation that you talked about, which sounds incredible, and we'll do that at the end. So if you're driving, definitely pull over to do this, or maybe listen to the rest of this episode at home or something like that if you want to experience the Tree of Life meditation. But before we get there, I want to just ask you, as someone who works with the breath quite a bit, what are some of the breath practices or just things that we can do to cultivate stillness in our busy modern lives? Because I'm sure a lot of people watching and listening to this episode, obviously they're tapped into everything that I talk about with The Way Forward, but it's always helpful to have things, especially since, like you said, breath is primary to this realm when it comes to our experience of it. What are some things that we need to bring back into the picture in our daily lives to help bring us back into stillness?
Yeah, so as we talked about the subtle and deep breathing, I highly encourage, no matter who you are, you build up this beautiful library of different breathing styles. There's many different books nowadays that you can access, and that's a beautiful way to start playing with them. Now, what happened for me is I would learn a certain breath, and then I would start pairing it with another. I actually call it hybrid breath work that we teach, because I've learned the power of the connectivity. Mm-hmm. And so that's something that everybody can start mixing with, because it's really beautiful to see what breath rhythm works for you, because everybody's individual. So just like we might need, 200 milligrams of C, somebody needs 1,000 milligrams, right? Mm-hmm. So same thing is the recipe of our breath. Now, when you are living your everyday life, you're working, computer, I find that 6x6 rhythm through the nose the most essential. So if you're a beginner, first-time breather, nasal breathing is key to longevity. When you breathe through your nose, it opens up a little filter. You're using your nose as a filter, so it protects you, but also as a resistance. So it's an amazing way to resist and to start breathing with your diaphragm, which is what we forgot about. And most people breathe in a shallow way. Yeah. And shallower the breath, then, more usually panicky you might be, more anxieties there are because we're tensing and we're not using and really feeding our body. Think about each and every breath can feed your cells. You need that energy
Literally.
to be, eating.
Quite literally, if it's if we're breathing negative charge, literally you are breathing for your cells.
Yeah. Yes. So there's even I forget which tradition, they literally believe that you have only a certain amount of breaths, before you die, and so more you extend your breaths, longer you live, and it's aka the quality as well, right?
Yeah.
Of the breath.
So like less breaths per minute. Essentially is what we're talking about. Yeah.
So, and even like in meditation, we might be breathing 10 to 15 times per minute, but like I like to drop it down to, 6 to 10, and then see if you can drop it all the way to like 2 to 5, breaths per minute. And that's really that super subtle hibernating, part of our breathing. Now, it's been proven that if you breathe in and out your nose, and the exact is like 5.5 in, 5.5 out, it can increase your heart rate variability, lower down your stress, and it brings your heart-brain coherence, up, so that way you can be more coherent, more present. Now, this breath, as frequently as you can remember, come back to it, driving, on a computer, speaking to someone, because that's the gateway of you being aware. Right? It's like I'm conscious, I'm here, I'm in my body.
That's what I say when I teach other people who are like very, very beginner meditators, is I say like, don't worry about any of the other things. Just like always come back to your breath. If your mind starts wandering off on thoughts on the past, the future, whatever, that's totally fine. Just become aware of it. Don't shame yourself, and then just come right back to the breath. That's it. That's all you have to do. And the more that you practice that consistently, it sort of brings you back to presence, because the breath quite literally is happening in the present. So if you come back to focusing on that, it'll pull you into the present.
And guess what it does? You now wake up, right? You're becoming aware of whatever is happening in your field, whatever you need to alter or change. Because if we're not aware of the breath, we're living an unconscious life. That's the autopilot, right? That's the repetition from past projecting into future. But to step away from it, we got to access it through the breath, right? And then whatever it's, the 4-7-8 rhythm, that's an amazing one for anxiety, right? You inhale through your nose for 4, hold your breath for 7, exhale out your mouth for 8, and you can repeat that. My favorite one is 4-4-6-2, or even long deep inhale for about 4 to 6 seconds, and then as long as you can with exhale, make the humming sound. So it's like deeply in, and then you just hum, and you keep on humming as far as deep as you can, and that is a direct access to calming down your nervous system. Sound vibration is so potent, and again, in our events we do a lot of screaming, shouting. It's like a roller coaster ride.
Dude, I mean, it totally makes sense with the breath. Actually, I was thinking about this earlier when I was thinking about this episode, as it comes to sound, and given that like we know that we have a biofield, and when we're listening to really healing music that's maybe tuned to 432 or 528 or whatever these healing frequencies are, like you do the solfeggio, that's incredible. When we're breathing, first off, when we're just in the midst of that sound, that is then coming into our biofield. And then if we're in a state of coherence, that our biofield receives that and it's imprinting into the waters of our body, first off. But then the second thing is, again, going back to the possibility that we breathe negative charge. If we're breathing in negative charge, these oxygen molecules that are floating about or whatever are ultimately being imbued with the sound current of that music that is hitting them. And then we're breathing that in, further reinforcing that negative charge is being breathed into our bodies and taken into our cells. So that's why music with breath work is so incredibly powerful, and they go hand in hand.
Wow. Yes. And wow, because
that makes sense. I hope I made sense.
100%. Yeah. Like, we literally have this exercise, the system reset, codes that basically at the end of this, we recode. And so the whole point is that from the mind, the software, speaking to the water system of the body, the hardware, right? And so we literally, you can connect your thumb and your point finger together. And, some people do EFT, whatever works for you. It's just the acknowledgement, right?
Yeah.
And so what we do is we literally say system reset, and you're speaking from the mind to the body, back to baseline now. So it's like holding the power button for 2 or more seconds until it resets back to baseline. Now, there's a whole code system that I've been, taught by Jas Muhin, that basically we first recode into the baseline. That's so you're back to your essence. Then you have the baseline of the different codings that we are then readapting to what we are. And so essentially it's like system reset, right? Perfect health now. Your body knows what a perfect health is. It's up to ourselves to allow it. And what's really important to understand, everything gives us a feedback, including ourselves. So at first, this was just like a plain words for me, but then I demand a response. So when you send a mail with a postal service, you write the address and you demand that it gets there, right? Or when you put a code on your computer, you press enter and it gets there. The same way the trust between the mind-body complex works that we've lost this connection to. And so I always tell people is you do it until you feel feedback. Maybe there's a pulsation, maybe a little bit of a tingling, maybe goosebumps. Your body will literally start talking to you. And by the way, try this exercise. If you still not feel anything, you become numb, which is normal in this world. Keep on telling your body how much you love yourself. So you literally just say, I love you, I love you, I love you, my body. And just keep on saying it until your body literally will start giving you feedback, because everything works in feedback. So this is the coding. So whenever I lose myself in the airport, a little bit of anxiety, I have a hard time sleep, I literally system reset, back to baseline now. Then I go into the code system reset, perfect health, perfect balance, perfect weight, and perfect image. So these are the 4 codes for coming into this pranic state, because the perfect weight is for you to rebalance. So many people are worried, too high, too low. Other people are worried about the image, because when we grow up from the people that we've been involved with, we feel alone. We feel like we're, almost not fitting in. So the perfect image is so you may be perceived and seen as you are, no matter where you go. Mm-hmm. And then you simply system reset, perfect energy, perfect creativity, whatever you want to code into, you code it in until you become so trustworthy of this. I mean, I demand it until my anxiety's gone. And
shit, dude, it looks like it works because you travel so much and you have a kid, you have 3 kids. I can't even imagine how inherently, dare I say, stressful that can be. So given how much I know that you travel and that you have 3 kids and you're so busy and you look incredible, you are embodying health so well, clearly this works. Clearly it works, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's amazing. Okay. So do you teach that system reset anywhere if people want to learn more?
Yeah, so this is system reset, we call it a toolbox, is basically from my 15 years of traveling the world, pulling all of these tools that work, that have some sort of scientific validation behind them. We bring them in and we create them so they're simple, they're fun, sort of they're easy with music, with dance, with, we teach something called BDM, breath, dance, meditation.
Love it.
Which is, I find that combination being extremely beautiful and powerful. And essentially we do over 100 events a year. So under the system reset, we take people through these transformative, experiences. And, that's become our why. It's like, how do we go into these cities, bring people into the state of coherence, connect these grids with all of the other cities around the world? Because we've done now over 500 events, 100,000 people over the last 8 years. And essentially, what's been happening is we're cultivating what does the new earth means. So literally in the final meditation, everybody, I prompt them to visualize, what would this earth 2.0 look like if we had enough, if we war wasn't even a question, if we were rethinking everything anew, because we forget to rethink, we forget to dream. Because a lot of us are focusing on all the bad things, right? And what are the governments doing to us and this. And yes, you can focus your attention to it, but it's like wasting your time. You got to focus your attention on new outcomes. And I think that's what,
it matters. It matters so much too. And I've said this before, obviously it's important to a certain degree to be aware of the dark things that are happening. It's no different than spiritually bypassing the darkness within yourself. If you're just, no, I won't look at it. But there's a difference between being aware of it and perpetually focusing on it, using your own thought energy, right? Knowing through, or indicating through Veda Austin's work, Dr. Masaru Emoto's work, Heart Math Institute's work, that what we focus on, and more importantly, what we focus on collectively, helps create more of that exact thing. I mean, you hear this concept of an egregore, like we can create a very negative experience just by getting our thought energy and orienting it towards one specific negative outcome. We can create that outcome to occur in reality. Like it's very clear through the work of, like I said, Veda, Masaru Emoto, Heart Math Institute, Lynn McTaggart, all these other people, Joe Dispenza, Bruce Lipton, Greg Braden. It's so obvious. It's hitting us right in the face. So just how that can be used in a negative context, it can also be used in a very positive context where we can initiate positive change in the world. So yes, be aware of the darker things that are happening, but don't give it your thought energy. You need to orient your thought energy towards that which you want, and that power amplifies like crazy when we do it collectively with groups of people, whether we're present with them or across the world, orienting our awareness towards one specific outcome that we want.
And that's literally our why. This is like when people ask, like, why do you travel so much? Why do you keep on going this way? It's because the hope that I see in people, like 95% of the world is beautiful, is so positive. 5% of the world needs some support and help. And that is what we see in the media. And then if you're still one of those that are watching media, like turn that shit off. Like it is not your reality. And it doesn't even have to exist to you. And it's
Right.
it's like when enough of us don't even think that war is an option, it will not exist. It's that simple. But until it is in our field as a potential, then that from the place of potentiality, there's still that fear that we're coming into this. And so the main point of view right now is that you unhook yourself, right? You come back into your greatest expression. You face your shit, like whatever is still, needs to be retuned in your life, you retune it so then you can show up for others in your collective. So many people are being scared and dimmed down in today's world from these people that are still ridden by fear. And I want you to remember, you don't have to fear anything. Like we are all got to get into this passion, get into that purpose, get into that greatest state of being and exchange those gifts with all of us present. Create these beautiful new communities that are happening all across the world. It's so fascinating. I would love to create a documentary to show this from city to city, to country, how the same type of person comes to these events and how these people, they listen to the same podcast. They've been through the same health stuff. Like
it's crazy. It's like archetypes.
It's literally, but like what is true is always true.
Yeah.
And that is eternal true, right? Like it is not true that love will always be called love, but it is true that the note of love has always been love.
Ooh.
Does that make sense?
Yes, totally makes sense.
So
doesn't
what
matter
is
what
true
you call it, the feeling is always going to be
always
the
true.
exact,
Yeah.
totally
And that
makes sense.
is what we're all waking up to. That is from different angles. We're all coming into it. And it is time we stop being zombies, right? Thinking that like, I do it better than you and I'm going to protect myself from you. And I'm going to tell you just enough. So that way, you have to come back to me. And that time is over. The level 1, 2, 3, 5, like it is time that we open up the books. We take the walls down and we unite. We unite from places that we've never even thought of were possible and leave that for the children that are coming into this world, behind.
Amen, man. Amen. So beautifully said. Okay, let's go ahead and do the Tree of Life meditation to end if we could.
Yes. Alrighty. So wherever you are, again, if you're driving, don't do it. If you are home, just get comfortable in a place of sitting or even laying down if you wish. And first, just come back to yourself. Slow down the rhythm of your breath and focus on a long, deep exhale. Exhale so long, so deep, that if there was a candle in front of you, it would not even flicker. With each and every exhale, sense all of your muscles relaxing, connecting to the space around you. And first, just call all your energy back. You can simply state for yourself, I am calling back all my energy from all the people, all the places, wherever I've left it. And just fill yourself up with all of you, that signature part of you. You can imagine specific things that you will be dealing with, Bring it all back home. Now reverse this and simply state for yourself, I am sending back all the energy from all the people, all the places that have left it on me. Everything is simple energy exchange. Not good, not bad. Allow whatever does not belong to you to return back to the sender. Connect to the source at the top of your head. Connect to your heart. Connect to the base of your spine, all three brains, and imagine them becoming one brain in the center of your heart. And start with each and every exhale, creating this little hologram in front of your heart. And imagine a seed in front of you. And I want you to plant this seed somewhere in the world that you can remember. And when you plant this seed, with each and every exhale, imagine that seed becoming this tree of your life. At the base of the tree is where you're sitting right now. At the top of the tree is when you take your final breath in this life form. And for this moment, can you go to the last breath that you take? And imagine your life backwards. If you had no limitations, start visualizing all these images connected to feelings and start becoming a dreamer of your own life. Where would you live? Where did you travel? What did you create? What did you learn? Who did you love? Start seeing all of these greatest images as if they already happened. Feel the response. Because in life, we don't spend enough time to get clear. No matter what it is that we choose to experience, it may alter, change, but allow for this direction, something to look forward to. And because everything happens in sequence, can you imagine yourself going down to about a year from now? Zoom into this time, this milestone, and start visualizing if it was end of 2025 and go backwards. What steps have you taken so that at the end of the life, you could live out your dreams? Feel it, see it. Because the way you create from your heart is you first imagine. Use the power of imagination. Then you set the attention. Through the elevated emotion. Because now, can you go all the way down to tomorrow? What are simple 3 things that you can bring into everyday life? Maybe 3 things you've learned today to integrate. Start visualizing how you can spend just 1 to 4% of your time every single day on realizing your dreams. To every day be closer. So at the end of the year, it's an accumulative approach. Be, do, and have. You embrace it, you feel it, you take the right steps so you can have it as a natural flow of life. And imagine this imprint, this tree, shrinking all the way down to a little dot. And I want you to place this dot somewhere on your body that you can remember. like a file on a computer. The biggest storage, our DNA, bigger than any Amazon. So that at any point of time, you can reopen, readjust as you grow. But I want you to commit yourself. Commit that from this moment on, you focus on the dreams when things get hard. You stay above the clouds. You focus on the outcomes because it's all just a little cycle that will pass again. Bring up all of that vitamin G, which is for gratitude. Fill yourself up with this thank you, thank you. Thank you for today. Thank you for my life. Thank you for the food, clothes, shelter. How lucky we are. Feel it in. And slowly open your eyes. Coming back to this moment. And allowing this imprint to work for you when you reassess. Is this path feeding me? How do you feel about different things? If you have a loved one, share it with them. Open up this portal. And this is a sample of our meditation, how we can simply go back into realizing our greatest dreams. Be a dreamer. I see it day by day. People with cancers that come to us, people that have lost their hopes, their homes, their loved ones, they forget to dream. That is the biggest power we have, imagination and power of intention.
Amen. Beautifully said, man. This is amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you. As we're closing, is there anything that you want to share? Obviously, everything will be linked in the show notes, but anything specific you want to share with what you're working on?
So we're working on, we started a school community. It's called the System Reset community. And it's something that we are now, every city we go to, we have a city in there. So no matter where you're from, eventually your city will be there. So we activate these cities and then we allow the people from these cities to support one another. So it's this support system. There's also education, there's breathwork, meditation, all that we teach. But most importantly, what we start seeing is maybe somebody from Australia is going through grief. Well, then somebody from London and let's say LA has gone through grief. So we're creating these, grief groups, for example, or no matter what we're going through, it's a self-governing approach to community. And so I highly suggest, join that, be part of this, especially those of you that want more and lack community. With our events, look on our website. We do retreats, workshops, conferences, immersive experiences, and we have a whole menu board. So we also have a culinary show, for example, with blindfolds and chef. We brought it into having fun,
Yeah.
And then we've also curated a group of consciousness expansion tools, like light therapy with Visor, which is a flickering light, red light, blue light for the morning. We've looked at our circadian rhythm. We've looked at what do we lack the most and what do we need, kind of like I call it the VIP lane to present moment. Like how do we accelerate that? And so some of these tools are super helpful also on our side.
Awesome. Thank you for joining me, man. This was amazing.
Thank you.